Some crimes leave behind more questions than answers. Some deaths remain shrouded in mystery, their stories buried in time, whispered only through fragments, clues, and the echoes of fear. Tonight, we step into the shadows of history, into the lives of those who vanished, those who endured, and those whose final moments remain unsolved. These are stories of survival, of terror, the unexplained real-life crimes and mysterious deaths that will challenge what you think you know about the world. From chilling kidnappings to baffling disappearances, from brutal family murders to inexplicable tragedies in remote places. We will explore events that defy explanation, yet left an indelible mark on the lives of victims and the minds of those who seek the truth. Prepare yourself to confront the unknown, to walk the line between fear and fascination, and to remember that sometimes reality is far more terrifying than fiction. Because these are the stories that history refuses to forget. And tonight, you will not forget them either. Flannan Isles Lighthouse Story: 3 men vanished from a remote lighthouse in the North Atlantic, leaving behind meals, logs, and a burning lamp. No one knows what happened to them. The Flannan Isles rise like jagged teeth from the stormy waters of Scotland's Outer Hebrides. In the winter of 1900, a fierce gale battered the tiny islands, waves smashing against cliffs that seemed to reach the sky. Standing on the tallest point was a lighthouse, a solitary beacon in the darkness, its light slicing through the endless Black Sea. Inside, the lighthouse should have been a place of routine. Oil lamps cleaned, logs written, meals eaten. But when the relief crew arrived on December 26th, everything was eerily wrong. The crew approached cautiously, calling out for the keepers James Dugard, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur, but no answer came. The lighthouse door was locked from the inside. Inside, the scene was strangely normal. Beds were unmade, chairs were in place, and a meal lay untouched. A kettle sat still on the stove, warm, as if recently used. But the logbook told a different story. For days, entries had been written as usual, noting the weather, the sea, and routine maintenance. Then, abruptly, the final entry ended, mid-sentence, storm ended. All well, nothing more. The relief crew scoured the cliffs and the jagged coastline, but found no trace of the men, no footprints, no rope marks, nothing. The equipment and lamps were all in perfect order, and even the logbook gave no indication of panic. It was as if the 3 men had simply vanished into thin air. Some theorized a rogue wave had swept them away. Others whispered of supernatural forces, claiming the islands were cursed. But to this day, no definitive explanation exists. Visitors to the Flannan Isles report strange occurrences, a sudden feeling of unease. Whispers on the wind, and the faintest flicker of a lighthouse lamp at night, even though no one is there to tend it. The mystery endures 3 men, swallowed by the sea or by something far stranger, forever lost to the storm. Mary Celeste 1872. The Mary Celeste set sail from New York bound for Genoa, Italy, with a cargo of alcohol and a crew of 7. Everything seemed normal at first, but when another ship spotted her drifting in the Atlantic a month later, the scene that greeted them was chilling. The ship was completely seaworthy. The sails were intact, the cargo untouched, and the personal belongings of the crew remained in their cabins. A lifeboat was missing, but there were no signs of struggle, no bodies, and no explanation for why the crew had abandoned the vessel. Among the eerie details was the captain's log, which ended abruptly a few days before the ship was found. It made no mention of any danger, and yet the entire crew had vanished as if they had been swallowed by the sea. Speculation ran wild. Piracy? Mutiny? A sudden storm? Some even suggested more sinister forces, or that a spontaneous explosion of alcohol fumes had forced the crew to flee. But none of these theories fully explained the absence of bodies or the intact cargo. To this day, the Mary Celeste remains a ghost ship, a vessel found adrift, carrying no living soul. Sailors report feeling an uneasy chill when passing the area where she was discovered. And the mystery of the crew's disappearance continues to haunt the maritime world. SS Eurung Medan 1947, it began with 2 separate ships in the South Pacific. One of them, a Dutch vessel, received a distress call that would haunt the world forever. Over the radio came garbled words, barely intelligible at first. All officers, including captain, dead. Crew dead. I die. The message ended abruptly. Concerned, the Dutch ship set a course to find the source. The SS Orang Medan, a merchant ship whose name would soon become synonymous with terror. When they finally located the vessel, drifting silently near the Strait of Malacca, the scene that greeted them was beyond comprehension. The Orang Medan lay motionless, its deck eerily still under the pale light of the setting sun. No flags waved, no smoke rose from the funnels. It was as if the ship had become a grave, floating on the open ocean. The boarding party climbed cautiously, their boots echoing against the metal deck. What they saw inside would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Every crew member was dead, frozen in place, faces twisted in expressions of horror and terror. Some had arms outstretched as if trying to defend themselves. Others appeared to be screaming silently, mouths open in eternal screams. The captain lay slumped in his cabin chair, his face a mask of sheer panic. There was no blood, no sign of violence, no weapons or tools out of place. Meals sat untouched. The ship's log was open on a desk, but it offered no answers. The horror was total and inexplicable. As the boarding party searched for clues, strange things began to happen. The ship seemed almost alive. A pungent, acrid smell filled the air, making it difficult to breathe. Others swore they saw shadows move in the corner of their eyes, only to vanish when looked at directly. Theories immediately emerged, but none could explain the scene fully. Some suggested toxic fumes, perhaps from the ship's cargo of chemicals, had killed the crew instantly. Others whispered of supernatural causes, believing the ship had been cursed. The fear was so palpable that even seasoned sailors felt an instinctive urge to leave the Orang Medan behind, as if the ship itself demanded they flee. Before they could tow the vessel, tragedy struck again. A fire broke out in the cargo hold, spreading quickly through the wooden decks. The ship exploded, sinking beneath the waves before any thorough investigation could be completed. All evidence was lost, leaving behind only rumors, survivor accounts, and a lingering sense of dread. To this day, the SS Orang Medan remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries at sea. Sailors tell stories of ghostly figures on the water, of a ship that appears silently on calm nights, crew members frozen in terror, calling out for help that will never come. Some claim the spirits of the Orang Medan still roam the oceans, a reminder of the horror that can strike without warning, leaving no trace except fear itself. The true cause of the crew's deaths may never be known, whether accident, chemical disaster, or something far more sinister. Where Orang Medan continues to haunt those who dare to remember it, a ghost ship whose silence speaks louder than any scream. The Sodder children, 1945. It was Christmas Eve in 1945. A night that should have been filled with laughter and celebration for the Sodder family in Fayetteville, West Virginia. The house was decorated with lights and ornaments, and the scent of a holiday meal filled the air. But that night, something went horribly wrong. Around midnight, a fire broke out in the Sodder home. George and Jenny Sodder, the parents, were awakened by the smell of smoke and the crackling of flames. They tried to rouse their 10 children, but the fire spread faster than anyone could imagine. Chaos erupted. George attempted to break down the front door, while Jenny desperately searched the rooms for her children. They managed to save 5 of their children, but 5 others, Morris, Martha, Louie, Jenny, and Betty, were never seen again. The fire consumed the house completely, leaving nothing but ashes and rubble. Authorities claimed it was a tragic accident, that the children had perished in the blaze. But the Sodders were unconvinced. There were no remains of the missing children in the ashes. Investigators later determined that the fire may have started outside the house, near the power line, strange for a simple accident. In the years that followed, the family received cryptic letters, strange sightings, and mysterious clues suggesting the children might have been kidnapped. One letter simply read, "We are watching. Do not try to find them." A mysterious man was reportedly seen in the area around the time of the fire, acting suspiciously near the Sodder home. Disappearance became one of America's most enduring mysteries. Did the children die in the fire, or were they taken? Some claim the family was targeted for unknown reasons. Others whisper of a more sinister plot, perhaps linked to gang activity or even political motives during the post-war era. Despite decades of searching, the Sodder children were never found. The home remains burned into history, not just for the flames that consumed it, but for the unanswered questions and the terror that lingered for years. Even now, some locals report seeing strange figures near the old Sauter property, especially on quiet Christmas nights, as if the missing children are still reaching out from somewhere unseen. The Dyatlov Pass Incident 1959. In the dead of winter 1959. 9 experienced hikers set out on an expedition in the Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union. Led by Igor Dyatlov, the group was prepared for harsh conditions, fully equipped with tents, skis, and supplies. But what happened to them in the remote, snow-covered wilderness would remain one of the most chilling mysteries of the 20th century. The hikers set up camp on the slopes of Kolat-Syakhl, a mountain ominously nicknamed the Dead Mountain by the local Mansi people. Days passed, and when the group failed to return, a search party was sent out. What they found was shocking. Their tent had been ripped open from the inside. Footprints in the snow led away from the campsite, some barefoot, some wearing only socks, descending toward the tree line. It was clear the hikers had fled in terror, but what could have driven them from a perfectly safe tent in the middle of a freezing night? Over the next few weeks, the bodies were discovered in stages. Some lay in the snow near the forest, others deeper in ravines. Investigators noted injuries that were disturbing: fractured skulls, broken ribs, and one woman with her tongue missing. Yet strangely, there were no external wounds consistent with an attack. Some of the hikers were even found partially undressed, as if fleeing a sudden, unbearable heat. The official investigation concluded it was a compelling natural force that caused their deaths, but no one could explain what this force was. Avalanche theories were proposed, though the terrain suggested otherwise. Others speculated about secret military tests, infrasound-induced panic, or even extraterrestrial involvement. Over the decades, books, documentaries, and interviews have tried to solve the mystery, but each theory seems to raise more questions than answers. The scene itself remains frozen in time: a torn tent, footprints leading into the night, and 9 lives snuffed out in a place where no one should have feared. Even today, hikers in the Ural Mountains speak in hushed tones about the Dyatlov Pass. They tell of sudden chills in the wind, strange sounds echoing through the mountains, and the feeling that invisible eyes are watching from the snowy slopes. For 9 young men and women, the mountains claimed them for reasons that may never be understood, leaving behind a story that continues to terrify and puzzle the world. The Dyatlov Pass Incident 1959. In the dead of winter 1959. 9 experienced hikers set out on an expedition in the Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union, led by Igor Dyatlov. The group was prepared for harsh conditions, fully equipped with tents, skis, and supplies. But what happened to them in the remote, snow-covered wilderness would remain one of the most chilling mysteries of the 20th century. The hikers set up camp on the slopes of Kolat-Syakhl, a mountain ominously nicknamed the Dead Mountain by the local Mansi people. Days passed, and when the group failed to return, a search party was sent out. What they found was shocking. Their tent had been ripped open from the inside. Footprints in the snow led away from the campsite, some barefoot, some wearing only socks, descending toward the tree line. It was clear the hikers had fled in terror, but what could have driven them from a perfectly safe tent in the middle of a freezing night? Over the next few weeks, the bodies were discovered in stages. Some lay in the snow near the forest, others deeper in ravines. Investigators noted injuries that were disturbing: fractured skulls, broken ribs, and one woman with her tongue missing. Yet strangely, there were no external wounds consistent with an attack. Some of the hikers were even found partially undressed, as if fleeing a sudden, unbearable heat. The official investigation concluded it was a compelling natural force that caused their deaths, but no one could explain what this force was. Avalanche theories were proposed, though the terrain suggested otherwise. Others speculated about secret military tests, infrasound-induced panic, or even extraterrestrial involvement. Over the decades, books, documentaries, and interviews have tried to solve the mystery, but each theory seems to raise more questions than answers. The scene itself remains frozen in time: a torn tent, footprints leading into the night, and 9 lives snuffed out in a place where no one should have feared. Even today, hikers in the Ural Mountains speak in hushed tones about the Dyatlov Pass. They tell of sudden chills in the wind, strange sounds echoing through the mountains, and the feeling that invisible eyes are watching from the snowy slopes. For 9 young men and women, the mountains claimed them for reasons that may never be understood. leaving behind a story that continues to terrify and puzzle the world. The Somerton Man, 1948. On a quiet summer morning, December 1st, 1948, the body of an unidentified man was found on Somerton Beach in Adelaide, Australia. He was lying propped against the dunes, fully dressed in a suit and tie. But something about the scene was immediately unsettling. His face was calm, almost serene, yet his death was a complete mystery. The man carried no identification. All the labels in his clothing had been removed. In his pockets were found scraps of paper, a bus ticket, and an unusual item. A tiny scrap with the words Tamam Shud, meaning ended or finished in Persian. This clue would lead investigators down a rabbit hole of cryptic codes, secret messages, and endless speculation. Autopsies revealed no obvious cause of death. There were no visible injuries, no signs of struggle, and toxicology reports were inconclusive. Some suspected poison, but no traces could be found. He seemed to have died silently, as if his body had betrayed no warning, leaving only questions in its wake. The investigation grew stranger. A hidden copy of the book Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam was discovered in a car near the scene, with a code penciled in its pages. Despite decades of analysis, no one has ever definitively cracked the code. Investigators could not identify the man, and no one came forward claiming him. Over the years, theories have swirled. Was he a spy caught in a web of Cold War intrigue? Was it a lover's secret gone wrong? Even suggested he was involved in international espionage, sent to Adelaide for reasons that remain forever hidden?
Probably.
Who visit Somerton Beach still speak of the mystery in hushed tones. The beach, once calm and serene, now seems to hold a silent warning. Some secrets are so carefully hidden that even death cannot reveal them. The Somerton Man remains one of Australia's most enduring mysteries. Who was he? How did he die? And what did the cryptic words Tamam Shud truly mean? Perhaps like the waves that lap the shore? The answers will continue to disappear, leaving only the haunting memory of a man who died and whose story remains unfinished. The Bennington Triangle, Vermont, 1940s, 1980s. For decades, southwestern Vermont became the center of a chilling series of unexplained disappearances. The area, which would later be called the Bennington Triangle, encompassed rugged mountains, dense forests, and isolated towns where the land itself seemed to swallow people whole. The first disappearance occurred in 1945, when Paula Jean Weldon, an 18-year-old college student, went hiking along the long trail near Glastonbury Mountain. She was never seen again. Search parties scoured the forest for weeks, combing through snow, mud, and underbrush. They found no trace of her, not even a scrap of clothing. Years later, other hikers, hunters, and locals vanished under eerily similar circumstances. In 1947, James Tedford disappeared from a bus on a routine route, leaving behind a seat that was suddenly and mysteriously empty. In 1950, Paul Jepson vanished while hunting near Glastonbury, and in 1960, Frida Langer disappeared from the same area, never to be found. The cases shared strange similarities. The disappearances always occurred in isolated areas, often near Glastonbury Mountain, and in almost every case, the missing person vanished without a trace. Locals reported unusual phenomena: strange lights in the sky, sudden cold spots in the forest, and a feeling of being watched when venturing too far from the towns. Some speculated about natural explanations: wild animals, quicksand, or treacherous terrain. Others whispered of something far darker: interdimensional rifts, mysterious creatures, or an ancient curse linked to the land itself. Witnesses described hearing strange noises at night: eerie cries, unidentifiable growls, and whispers carried on the wind that seemed almost human. The legend of the Bennington Triangle grew over decades, becoming a magnet for thrill seekers and paranormal enthusiasts. Yet, despite countless theories, no one has ever fully explained why so many people disappeared in the same region, leaving behind only the silent, foreboding forests of Vermont, which seem to watch and wait for their next victim. Even today, hikers report sudden chills, glimpses of figures among the trees, and the haunting sense that they are not alone. The Bennington Triangle remains one of America's most enduring and terrifying mysteries, a place where the line between reality and the unknown seems to vanish. The Hinterkaifeck Murders, Germany, 1922, in a remote part of Bavaria, Germany. The Hinterkaifeck farm was home to the Gruber family, Andreas and Chiselia, their adult daughter Victoria and her children, Chiselia and Joseph. To the neighbors, it was a quiet farm, isolated yet picturesque, nestled in the snow-covered hills. But in March 1922, something unimaginable occurred. For days before the murders, Andreas noticed strange signs, footprints in the snow leading to the farm that didn't. Team match anyone in the household, doors and windows that were mysteriously locked and objects moved from their usual places. Family reported hearing footsteps in the attic, yet no one seemed to be there. A sense of unease settled over the farm, as if some unseen presence was watching. On the evening of March 31st, all 6 residents were brutally murdered with a Matica-heavy farming tool inside the farmhouse. The killings were precise and vicious, but no signs of robbery were found. The perpetrators vanished without leaving any trace. Some of the bodies were discovered days later, and in a macabre twist. It seemed that the killer may have lingered on the farm for days after the murders, feeding the animals and tending to the property. Investigators were baffled. Several suspects were questioned, from neighbors to former employees, but none were ever convicted. Theories ranged from a family feud to a vengeful outsider, yet nothing could explain the strange footprints, the moving objects, or the possibility that the killer had lived among the victims for days before vanishing. Over time, Hinterkaifeck became a chilling legend in Germany, inspiring countless books, documentaries, and speculative theories. Visitors to the area speak of cold drafts, sudden noises, and a lingering feeling that the land itself holds the memory of the violent act. Even a century later, the murderers remain unknown, and the farm's story continues to haunt those who uncover it. The lighthouse of Elaine Moor, 1900, off the storm-lashed coast of Scotland. The Elaine Moor Lighthouse stood as a solitary beacon against the relentless North Atlantic. In December 1900, 3 keepers, James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur, were assigned to maintain the light through the harsh winter. Yet by the time the relief ship arrived, the lighthouse was empty. Inside, meals were uneaten, chairs were in place, and beds were untouched. The logbook recorded routine entries until December 15th, abruptly ending with an unfinished note about a violent storm. The men had vanished without a trace. Despite extensive searches, no bodies or clues were ever found. Some believed a massive wave had swept them into the sea. Others whispered of paranormal forces, suggesting the lighthouse was cursed. Over the decades, the story became a staple of maritime folklore, a place where the wind whispers secrets, and the light of the lighthouse seems to flicker for a crew that no longer exists. Even today, sailors report sudden chills when passing the islands, lights that vanish and reappear, and the eerie sensation of being observed by unseen eyes. The Elaine Moor Lighthouse stands as a monument to isolation, mystery, and a terror that lingers far beyond the mortal world. The ghost ship SS Jaycee, 1931 to 1960 and 1931. The SS Jaycee, a steel cargo ship, became trapped in Arctic ice off the coast of Alaska. The crew was forced to abandon ship, assuming it would be crushed by the ice. Over the next 3 decades, sightings of the Jaycee persisted. Sailors reported the ship drifting silently through fog and ice, appearing suddenly like a phantom on the frozen waters. Some boarded the vessel and found it in remarkable condition. Untouched cargo, empty cabins, and the eerie silence of a ship abandoned long ago. Despite numerous expeditions, no crew was ever found. The Jaycee became a legend, the quintessential ghost ship of the Arctic. Weather reports, journal entries, and eyewitness accounts describe a vessel that moves as if guided by its own will, appearing and disappearing with the mists and ice. By 1969, the ship was officially abandoned, but sightings continued, cementing its reputation as one of the world's most mysterious and haunting ghost ships. The disappearance of Maura Murray, 2004, America's cold case mystery. Out. On the night of February 9, 2004, 21-year-old Maura Murray, a nursing student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, disappeared without a trace. What began as an ordinary evening in a young woman's life would quickly spiral into one of America's most baffling and haunting cold cases. Her disappearance remains unsolved, a chilling reminder of how quickly routine can give way to unspeakable mystery. Maura was described by friends and family as intelligent, determined, and independent. She had a calm demeanor, and a meticulous nature, characteristics that made her stand out among her peers. On the night she vanished, Maura called her professors to inform them she would be missing class due to a family emergency. She packed a bag, withdrew a significant amount of cash from an ATM, and left her dorm quietly. Her friends would later describe her demeanor as calm, yet purposeful, as if she had a plan she was not ready to share. Maura drove her black Saturn sedan north toward Haverhill, New Hampshire, and eventually Route 112 in rural New Hampshire, somewhere along the remote, winding roads of the White Mountains. She lost control of her vehicle, crashing into a snowbank. A passing truck driver later reported seeing her car on the side of the road with its hazard lights flashing, but at the time he did not stop. It is unclear whether she was injured, frightened, or if something else occurred before or after the crash. Shortly after the accident, a local resident reported seeing a young woman standing near the car, appearing distressed. A police officer arrived at the scene after receiving the call. Maura was gone. Her vehicle remained abandoned, with keys, wallet, and personal items inside, yet she had vanished. What makes Maura Murray's case especially haunting are the events leading up to her disappearance. Friends and family later revealed she had been under significant stress in the weeks before leaving. There were financial issues, struggles with school, and tension in her personal relationships. Yet these are common pressures in young adults' lives, and do not explain the sudden, total disappearance of a fully capable, intelligent woman. Investigators examined her personal computer, her phone records, and her recent travel. They found nothing that could definitively explain where she went, why she left, or whether she intended to disappear. Some evidence suggested she might have planned a getaway, as she had researched towns in New Hampshire and plotted potential routes. Yet unlike staged disappearances, no further signs of preparations such as falsified documents, prepaid reservations, or contact with strangers were ever found. The New Hampshire wilderness surrounding the crash site is dense, remote, and unforgiving. Snow and rough terrain make survival extraordinarily difficult, especially for someone without supplies or knowledge of the area. Search parties scoured the mountains, fields, and rivers, using dogs, helicopters, and volunteers. Despite these efforts, no trace of Maura Murray, no clothing, no personal items, no footprints was ever discovered. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Over the years, numerous theories have emerged. Some suggest she wandered into the forest, succumbing to the elements. Others propose foul play, that someone abducted her, possibly taking advantage of the isolated crash site. There are even theories involving secret witnesses, criminal activity, or misidentified sightings across the region. Every lead has ultimately resulted in dead ends, leaving the family and investigators frustrated and haunted. The psychological and emotional toll on her family has been profound. Maura's parents, Bill and Lori Murray, have devoted themselves to keeping her story alive, working with independent investigators, posting updates online, and appealing to anyone with information. Friends recall that she was a careful, methodical person, someone unlikely to disappear voluntarily without a trace. This has only deepened the mystery and the fear surrounding her case. Maura Murray's disappearance has also captured national attention. True crime enthusiasts, journalists, and online communities have analyzed the case in painstaking detail, reviewing police reports, satellite images, weather patterns, and witness statements. Podcasts and documentaries have explored every facet of the mystery, dissecting the timeline, her possible motives, and the strange events of that night. Yet, despite intense scrutiny, no definitive explanation has emerged. The case has a chilling aura because of its total lack of closure. Unlike typical missing person cases, where some evidence eventually emerges: personal belongings, sightings, ransom demands, Maura Murray has left behind only questions. Every possible scenario has flaws, every lead is inconclusive, and every explanation raises new doubts. The crash site remains frozen in time, a place of eerie silence and unanswered questions, while the surrounding forest and mountains keep her secrets locked away. Adding to the unsettling nature of this case are the numerous alleged sightings reported over the years. Some claim to have seen a young woman matching her description hitchhiking on remote roads. Others describe encounters in nearby towns where a woman appeared distressed or disoriented. Investigators and skeptics debate the validity of these claims, but each reported sighting contributes to the lingering sense that Maura Murray's story is unfinished, perhaps that she is still out there somewhere. Maura Murray's disappearance is a story that defies resolution. It challenges investigators, fascinates the public, and terrifies anyone who considers the fragility of life and the unpredictability of fate. The combination of a sudden vanishing, a remote and unforgiving environment, and the complete absence of evidence creates a narrative that is both compelling and horrifying. In the end, Maura Murray remains missing. Her vehicle sits as a silent monument to unanswered questions. The crash site, a haunting reminder of how quickly ordinary events can spiral into inexplicable tragedy. Her story continues to captivate true crime enthusiasts, journalists, and anyone drawn to mysteries that resist closure. Every February, on the anniversary of her disappearance, her family and supporters remember her, holding on to hope, fear, and the unsettling reality that sometimes people vanish without a trace, and the world is left to wonder why. The disappearance of Maura Murray is more than a case file. It is a story about uncertainty, human vulnerability, and the haunting truth that some mysteries are never solved. For investigators, friends, and family, her absence is a constant presence, a reminder that life can change in an instant, and that the unknown often lurks closer than we realize. The disappearance of Brandon Swanson, 2008, America's vanishing teen, on May 14, 2008. 19-year-old Brandon Swanson set out for a night that should have been ordinary, a casual drive in his hometown of Marshall, Minnesota. It was a warm spring evening, the sky clear and the streets quiet. Brandon, described by friends and family as responsible, level-headed, and cautious, had just finished helping a friend move some belongings. He was driving his father's old Ford Ranger truck when his life and the lives of his loved ones were changed forever. Brandon had plans to head home, but decided to stop by a local bar briefly to meet friends. That night, he drove along familiar back roads, enjoying the solitude of the quiet rural highways. Around 1:30 a.m., Brandon ran into an unexpected situation. He became stuck in a ditch. His truck, apparently skidding on loose gravel, slid partially off the road into a shallow embankment. It wasn't severe, but it left him stranded on a road that was dark, isolated, and largely unmonitored. Recognizing the situation, Brandon called his parents, Ron and Joyce Swanson, for help. He was calm, speaking rationally, and explained that he had gone off the road, but that he was unharmed. The family reassured him that they would come immediately to help. He promised to stay put until they arrived, providing directions and landmarks to help them locate him. What happened next would become one of the most confounding disappearances in recent American history. As his parents drove to find him, Brandon remained on the phone, talking casually about his location and plans. But in the conversation, something inexplicable occurred. Brandon suddenly mentioned hearing something nearby, the rustling of the river, the wind through the trees, and then the sound of water moving in a way he hadn't expected. His tone, while still calm, hinted at slight concern. At one point, he told his parents he would walk toward the lights of a nearby town marshal, about 2 miles away, to meet them, hoping they could converge on a visible location. This was his last rational plan, and the Swansons agreed that it was safe given the conditions, though they worried about him walking in the dark along rural roads. Brandon promised to call back once he reached the road or saw their vehicle. Minutes later, the call abruptly ended. Phones went unanswered. Calls from the Swansons to Brandon's cell phone rang without response. Concern escalated quickly. They called local authorities. Reporting. Brandon missing. Around 2:30 a.m. A search was launched immediately, focusing first on the ditch where Brandon had been stranded and the nearby roads he might have taken. What investigators discovered or failed to discover only deepened the mystery. Brandon's truck remained in the ditch, intact, showing no signs of vandalism or foul play. There were no tire tracks leading away from the truck, consistent with his intended route, no evidence of him walking along nearby paths, and no personal items left behind. The land around the ditch was flat, open, and sparsely wooded, making it highly unusual that a person could vanish entirely without leaving footprints or traces. Despite extensive search efforts by law enforcement, volunteer teams, and specialized trackers, Brandon Swanson was never found. Helicopters scoured the area, K-9 units combed the surrounding fields, and nearby creeks and rivers were examined, yet there was no sign of him. The search continued for days, then weeks, then years, but yielded nothing. It was as if Brandon had walked off the face of the earth. The baffling circumstances of the disappearance prompted numerous theories. Some suggested that Brandon, unfamiliar with the darkness of rural roads, accidentally fell into a waterway or became trapped in hidden terrain, perhaps a culvert, drainage ditch, or other feature that obscured him from searchers. Others proposed that he might have been abducted, targeted by someone who had observed his situation on the isolated road. Yet no evidence supporting either hypothesis was ever found. Local residents who joined the search reported strange anomalies. Some claimed to see distant lights that appeared and vanished suddenly, while others heard faint noises in the otherwise quiet field sounds that could not be attributed to animals, wind, or vehicles. Although such reports are anecdotal, they contributed to the eerie, almost supernatural aura surrounding the case. Brandon's disappearance drew national attention. Media outlets covered the story extensively, interviewing his parents, friends, and authorities. Psychologists and investigative experts weighed in, offering theories ranging from accidental wandering to abduction. Yet all attempts to reconstruct his movements or determine what happened after the phone call failed to provide any definitive answers. Family members remain haunted by the unknown. Ron and Joyce Swanson have dedicated years to keeping Brandon's story alive, contacting investigators, media outlets, and missing person organizations. They continue to hope that new evidence will emerge, even decades later, though the passage of time has only made the mystery deeper. The case of Brandon Swanson is terrifying in part because it defies logic. A healthy, rational, and careful young man, stranded only a few miles from town, vanished without leaving a single trace. Unlike disappearances in dense forests or urban settings where one might vanish unseen, the terrain of Brandon's disappearance was open, with little cover for concealment. Yet no footprints, no belongings, and no physical evidence of his presence beyond the truck were ever found. Over the years, amateur investigators and online communities have speculated endlessly. Some suggest that Brandon wandered into a previously unmapped or hidden terrain feature. Others, less skeptical, propose that foul play occurred, perhaps by someone familiar with the area who could have intercepted him on the road. There are even fringe theories involving alternate dimensions or unexplained phenomena, though these remain speculative. Every May, on the anniversary of his disappearance, the memory of Brandon Swanson resurfaces in Marshall, Minnesota. Friends, neighbors, and family members reflect on the unsettling truth that someone can vanish in plain sight, leaving only the void of uncertainty and the echoes of a phone call that abruptly ended. Brandon Swanson's case remains active in law enforcement databases, continually monitored for leads. Yet, after more than a decade, no new evidence has emerged. Theories abound, but the mystery endures. It is a story not only of a missing person, but of the fragility of human certainty, the chilling realization that someone can disappear completely, leaving loved ones with nothing but unanswered questions. The story of Brandon Swanson is a haunting example of unresolved disappearance, challenges assumptions about safety, predictability, and human control. A rational young man on a familiar road, equipped with a cell phone, a vehicle, and the intention to return home, vanished in a single moment. Nothing was left behind except fear, sorrow, and the unfathomable mystery that continues to grip investigators, his family, and the public. In the end, Brandon Swanson serves as a reminder of the unknown and the unpredictability of life. In the quiet rural roads of Minnesota, somewhere beyond the ditch where his truck remains, the world still holds its secrets. The disappearance is unsolved, the case cold, and the story a chilling testament to the terrifying possibility that a person can vanish entirely without a trace, without warning, and without explanation. The disappearance of Brian Schaefer, 2006, the mysterious vanishing in a college bar. On the night of March 31st, 2006, 27-year-old Brian Schaefer, a medical student at Ohio State University, stepped out for what should have been a routine night with friends. He had spent the evening studying and socializing with classmates, and by all accounts he was in good spirits. That night, like many college students, he visited several bars near the university campus. Yet, unlike countless other evenings, this night would end in a mystery that has puzzled investigators, friends, and the public for years. Brian was known as friendly, intelligent, and responsible. Friends described him as dependable, level-headed, and unlikely to engage in risky behavior. That evening, he visited the Ugly Tuna Saloon, a popular college bar located just off High Street in Columbus, Ohio. He arrived with two friends, entering the lively, crowded establishment where music, laughter, and the smell of beer filled the air. Video surveillance from inside the bar shows Brian interacting normally with friends and other patrons. He was seen laughing, conversing, and moving about the bar with ease. His demeanor was calm, focused, and cheerful. At around 1 a.m., Brian told his friends he was going to the restroom, a statement that, at the time, seemed unremarkable. This would be the last confirmed sighting of him. What makes the case particularly chilling is what followed. Surveillance footage captured Brian entering the restroom, but there is no record of him leaving. Unlike typical disappearances where someone might walk out unnoticed in a crowded space, the bar had only two exits, the main entrance, and a side door leading to a corridor connecting to other bars. Security footage confirms that he never exited the building through either doorway. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Immediately, friends and staff began to notice Brian's absence. He never returned from the restroom, and repeated calls and inquiries went unanswered. His friends left the bar to search nearby streets, assuming he had left for another location. But Brian's car, a gray 2004 Pontiac Grand Prix, remained parked outside the bar untouched. There were no signs of struggle, forced entry, or any altercation. The police were contacted early the following morning. Investigators examined the bar in detail, reviewing video footage, interviewing patrons and staff, checking nearby alleyways and streets. They found no trace of Brian. His wallet, cell phone, and keys were left behind in the car, suggesting he did not leave voluntarily. The lack of evidence pointed to an unnerving possibility. Something or someone intervened between the restroom and the exits, removing him without detection. Over the years, several theories have emerged, each more perplexing than the last. One suggestion was that Brian wandered into a concealed space, perhaps hiding, and became trapped. However, thorough searches of the bar, including crawl spaces and utility rooms, revealed nothing. Another theory involves foul play, that someone within the crowded bar, or connected to it, abducted him. Yet no suspects were ever identified, no confessions made, and no evidence supporting criminal involvement has surfaced. Some investigators considered the possibility that Brian suffered a sudden medical event that incapacitated him and caused him to disappear unnoticed. But Brian had no known health conditions that would explain such an event. His friends and family noted that he was healthy, active, and careful, making a sudden accident inside the restroom unlikely. The psychological impact on Brian's family has been profound. Parents Larry and Linda Schaefer have tirelessly pursued leads, worked with private investigators, and kept his story in the public eye. Friends have organized search parties, circulated missing person reports, and appeared on national news programs, all in the hope of discovering the fate of a man who simply vanished. The Ohio State University community was also deeply affected. Students and staff grappled with the unsettling knowledge that someone could disappear in such a crowded, familiar environment, with no trace left behind. The case became a cautionary tale about the fragility of safety, even in spaces presumed to be secure. Over time, numerous tips have surfaced, from alleged sightings in other states to stories of suspicious activity near the bar that night. Most of these leads have proven false or inconclusive, yet each has added to the enduring mystique of Brian Schaefer's disappearance. True crime enthusiasts have analyzed the case for years, debating potential motives, scenarios, and overlooked details. Yet the truth remains elusive, buried beneath uncertainty and speculation. Adding to the eeriness of the story are the unexplained phenomena surrounding the bar itself. Employees have reported lights flickering, sudden drafts, and the feeling of being watched near the area where Brian was last seen. While these may be anecdotal or coincidental, they contribute to the haunting narrative that has grown around the case. What makes Brian Schaefer's disappearance particularly unsettling is the combination of ordinary circumstances and extraordinary mystery. He entered a crowded bar, a familiar and public space, and simply vanished. There was no sign of abduction, no evidence of voluntary disappearance, and no clue that explains the sudden cessation of his presence. Surveillance footage, often the most reliable form of evidence, only deepens the enigma. He entered the restroom and never emerged. In the years since, the case has been compared to urban legends. missing person mysteries, and unresolved disappearances across the country. It serves as a stark reminder that even in modern, highly surveilled environments, people can vanish entirely. Brian Schaefer's story is not merely one of absence, it is a study in uncertainty. The terrifying potential for the ordinary to shift into the inexplicable. Brian remains missing. His case is active in law enforcement databases and continues to draw interest from amateur investigators, journalists, and true crime enthusiasts worldwide. Every March 31st, the anniversary of his disappearance, friends, family, and supporters reflect on the incomprehensible event, renewing the hope that some clue, some revelation might finally emerge. The disappearance of Brian Schaefer is more than a case study. It is a chilling testament to the unknown. It is a story that challenges assumptions about safety, predictability, and human awareness. It demonstrates that even in public-controlled spaces, someone can vanish entirely, leaving behind only questions, grief, and the echo of an unanswered call. Ultimately, Brian Schaefer's vanishing remains an open-ended narrative. There is no closure, no evidence, and no finality. His story endures as a haunting, unsolved mystery, a real-life reminder that the world still contains corners where the ordinary can dissolve into the utterly inexplicable. The disappearance of Asha Degree 2000, America's unsolved child mystery. In the pre-dawn hours of February 14, 2000, 9-year-old Asha Degree left her home in Shelby, North Carolina, and vanished into the dark, cold February morning. Her disappearance remains one of the most baffling and haunting child abduction cases in American history. Despite extensive searches, countless tips, and decades of investigation, no trace of Asha has ever been found. And her story continues to unsettle anyone who learns it. Asha was described by her family as bright, independent, and thoughtful, a child who loved school, reading, and spending time with her younger brother and sister. She lived with her parents, Elizabeth and Doug Degree, in a quiet neighborhood root of Shelby. Though she had the typical concerns and challenges of a young child, there was nothing in her behavior that suggested she was planning to leave home on her own. That night, Asha was last seen in her home at around 1 a.m. Her parents were asleep, as were her siblings, unaware that she had quietly packed a small bag of clothes, a flashlight, and some personal items. The reasons behind her actions remain unclear, as Asha never left a note, nor was there evidence of conflict or fear that would prompt her to run away voluntarily. The first signs of her absence were discovered when her father awoke in the morning to find the front door partially open. Asha was missing. Initial assumptions were that she might have wandered off to a nearby friend's house or been picked up by a family member. However, searches of the neighborhood revealed nothing, no footprints in the snow, no evidence of forced entry, and no signs of a struggle. Law enforcement quickly became involved. Police officers, volunteers, and neighbors conducted extensive searches of the surrounding area, including fields, wooded areas, and nearby highways. The weather that night had been cold but clear, with some snow on the ground that should have captured footprints. Yet, as if swallowed by the earth itself, Asha had vanished without a trace. What made the case even more disturbing were the details discovered in the investigation. Surveillance evidence from the time suggested that Asha had left her home deliberately, walking along a highway in the middle of the night, wearing pajamas and carrying her small bag. Witnesses later reported seeing a young girl matching her description walking along Highway 18, far from any safe or familiar area. It appeared that she had traveled miles on foot before disappearing completely. The question of motive reason haunted investigators and the family alike. Why would a 9-year-old leave home in the dead of night, fully aware of the risks posed by traffic, strangers, and cold weather? Was she fleeing something, attempting to escape, or following some inexplicable impulse? There were no clear indicators in her personal life or family circumstances to explain her actions. Over the years, numerous theories have been proposed. Some suggested that Asha had been abducted by a stranger or someone she knew, perhaps waiting along the road she walked. Others speculated that she may have become disoriented, wandering into dense woods, rivers, or fields where she succumbed to the elements. Yet, extensive searches using search and rescue teams, helicopters, and specially trained dogs produced no evidence of her presence. The case took on an additional layer of mystery when investigators examined her movements along the highway. Witnesses described seeing her flashlight flickering in the distance, suggesting she was aware of her surroundings, but struggling to navigate safely. Some accounts reported a vehicle driving slowly near the area where she was last seen, though it was never identified, and the driver never came forward. Could this have been the presence of a predator, or was it coincidental? The uncertainty only deepened the fear surrounding the case. Family members were devastated. Elizabeth and Doug Degree never gave up hope, tirelessly working with law enforcement, private investigators, and media outlets to spread awareness about their daughter's disappearance. Every lead, tip, and reported sighting was pursued, yet all attempts to locate Asha proved fruitless. Her disappearance cast a long shadow over the family, transforming ordinary days into endless questioning, grief, and fear. The investigation remained active for years, with local, state, and federal authorities collaborating to solve the case. Despite technological advances in forensic science, surveillance, and investigative techniques, Asha's trail remained cold. Authorities created age-progressed images, distributed thousands of flyers, and examined tips nationwide, but nothing concrete ever emerged. The case of Asha Degree also sparked significant public and media attention, raising awareness about child abduction and the vulnerabilities children face. Her story has been cited in numerous documentaries, books, podcasts, exploring mysterious disappearances and unsolved crimes. True crime enthusiasts continue to debate the circumstances, from her motivations to potential suspects, though no definitive conclusions have been reached. Adding to the eerie nature of the case is the persistence of unexplained reports. Occasionally, individuals claim to have seen a girl resembling Asha in various parts of the country, though none have been substantiated. Some sightings are likely misidentifications, but they contribute to the haunting narrative that Asha may still be alive, and that her disappearance was orchestrated with chilling precision. The disappearance of Asha Degree is terrifying because of its combination of mystery, innocence, and the absence of closure. A young, intelligent, and capable child left her home voluntarily, where it was compelled to leave, yet vanished in a manner that defies logic. There is no body, no evidence of foul play, and no indication of her final destination. The uncertainty amplifies the horror, leaving only the void of questions that have no answers. Today, the highway where Asha was last seen remains a silent, chilling reminder of that night. Locals speak of it in hushed tones, recounting the story of a child who vanished without warning, a mystery that has endured for over 2 decades. The case remains open, the family vigilant, and the public captivated, as the memory of Asha Degree persists as both a symbol of hope and an emblem of unsolved tragedy. Ultimately, the disappearance of Asha Degree is more than a missing persons case. It is a haunting narrative of uncertainty, vulnerability, and the terrifying unknown. It challenges our assumptions about safety, control, and the fragility of life. Even now, decades later, her story continues to inspire fear, empathy, and relentless curiosity, reminding the world that some mysteries are never solved and some shadows never fade. The disappearance of Eliza Lamb 2013, the mystery of the Cecil Hotel in the early days of February 2013, 21-year-old Eliza Lamb, a Canadian student studying at the University of British Columbia, arrived in Los Angeles for a short vacation. She was vibrant, adventurous, and outgoing, a young woman exploring the world. Documenting her travels online and engaging with friends and family back home. Yet what should have been a brief trip for sightseeing and exploration would turn into one of the most haunting mysteries of the 21st century. Elisa checked into the Cecil Hotel, a downtown Los Angeles establishment with a dark history. The hotel, infamous for violent crimes, suicides, and mysterious deaths, seemed innocuous to guests, but had a reputation among locals as a place where misfortune often occurred. Elisa, unaware of the hotel's reputation, stayed in a modest room on the 14th floor, planning to explore the city during the day and return each night. On January 31st, 2013, Elisa was reported missing by hotel staff. She had not been seen for several days, and her absence was unusual enough to trigger concern. Friends in Canada had also noticed her lack of communication and reached out, heightening worries that something terrible had happened. Hotel staff searched the building, checking rooms and corridors, but Eliza was nowhere to be found. Her belongings remained in her room, including her passport, wallet, and luggage. There were no signs of forced entry or theft. Investigators initially considered the possibility that she had left voluntarily, perhaps for personal reasons, but the lack of communication and her careful, organized nature made this unlikely. The case took a chilling turn when hotel guests reported strange occurrences in the days prior to Eliza's disappearance. Surveillance footage captured her acting erratically in the hotel's elevator. In the video, she is seen pressing multiple buttons, stepping in and out, peering nervously around corners, and gesturing as if communicating with an unseen presence. Her movements are abrupt and erratic, her expressions anxious, fearful, and at times almost frantic. The footage sparked debate and speculation. Some experts suggested that she may have been experiencing a mental health episode, possibly psychosis or a panic attack, leading to her erratic behavior. Others noted the possibility of drug-induced disorientation, given that she occasionally documented recreational use in her personal life. Yet nothing in the footage explained what ultimately happened to her or how she vanished. After days of searching, Eliza Lamb's body was discovered on February 19, 2013. Inside one of the hotel's rooftop water tanks. The discovery was made after guests complained of low water pressure and a strange taste, prompting maintenance workers to investigate. The tank had been secured with heavy lids and locked with chains, making it seemingly inaccessible. How Eliza had gained entry remained a terrifying puzzle. The autopsy concluded that her death was accidental, likely due to drowning. There was no evidence of foul play or physical trauma, yet the circumstances of her death defied logic. The rooftop was locked, the water tanks were high, and required significant effort to access, and her body had been submerged for days. Questions about how she reached the tank, why she entered it, and whether anyone else was involved remain unanswered. The case attracted international attention, both for the tragic loss of a young life and the bizarre, inexplicable nature of the events. True crime enthusiasts, paranormal investigators, and internet sleuths pored over the elevator footage, analyzing every gesture, glance, and movement. Some speculated about supernatural influences, referencing the hotel's dark history. Others focused on mental health explanations, theorizing that an episode of psychosis or panic led her to the rooftop, disoriented and unable to escape. Adding to the eerie complexity of the case were reports from hotel staff and previous guests. Many spoke of strange noises, odd smells, and unusual activity in the hallways. The Cecil Hotel had been the site of suicides, murders, and unexplained deaths for decades. One infamous past resident, serial killer Richard Ramirez, had stayed there during his killing spree, cementing the hotel's notoriety. The building itself seemed to carry an aura of unease, amplifying the haunting nature of Eliza Lamb's disappearance and death. Investigators considered the possibility of an accidental fall or misstep. The water tanks were large, heavy, and cylindrical, with ladders and access points that could be navigated by someone desperate or disoriented. Yet the logistics of the situation, how a small young woman gained access to the tank, entered it, and remained undetected, remained perplexing. Experts have attempted to recreate the scenario with varying results, but none fully account for the eerie details captured in the footage and the inaccessible location of her body. Online communities, forums, and YouTube channels dissected the case extensively. The elevator video became viral, raising countless theories ranging from accidental mental health episodes to elaborate foul play, occult influences, or even paranormal interference. The combination of video evidence, inaccessible death location, and the hotel's grim reputation created a perfect storm of speculation, fear, and fascination. Eliza Lamb's family has continued to mourn her loss while advocating for awareness around mental health, safety, and the perils of unsupervised exploration. They emphasize that while online speculation is rampant, the case involves a real human tragedy, the life of a young woman cut short under bizarre and horrifying circumstances. The story of Eliza Lamb is terrifying not only for the unexplained nature of her death, but for the intersection of ordinary and extraordinary elements. She was a student traveling alone, navigating a city she barely knew. And yet she became part of an event that confounded authorities, traumatized witnesses, and captivated the world. Her last known moments, captured on video, remain haunting, a silent record of fear, confusion, and something inexplicable that defies closure. Even today, the Cecil Hotel continues to evoke unease, though it has been rebranded as the Stay on Main. Visitors and locals still recount strange occurrences, unexplained noises, and eerie experiences in the building. The shadow of Eliza Lamb's disappearance lingers, a chilling reminder that sometimes the ordinary spaces we occupy can hide unfathomable mysteries. Ultimately, Eliza Lamb's case is more than a cold case. It is a testament to the unknown, a story of human vulnerability, and a haunting reminder that some deaths, however thoroughly investigated, remain unexplained. It is a narrative that continues to captivate, terrify, and puzzle, compelling anyone who learns of it to question what is truly possible in the world around us. Story 9. The Disappearance of Stephen Kocher, 2009. The vanishing of a man in Las Vegas on the night of December 13, 2009. 30-year-old Stephen Kocher, a real estate agent living in Henderson, Nevada, vanished without a trace. Known as responsible, quiet, and meticulous, Stephen's disappearance has baffled investigators' family and the public for over a decade, turning what should have been a routine evening into one of the most perplexing missing persons cases in the Las Vegas area. Stephen had spent the day working, attending meetings, and handling routine errands. He was described by friends and colleagues as conscientious and reliable, with no history of risky behavior or mental instability. That evening, he left his home in Henderson around 7 p.m., dressed casually, carrying only a small bag. He was reported to have been planning to drive around the Las Vegas area, allegedly looking for houses and possible real estate opportunities, a typical activity for his line of work. By nightfall, Stephen's car was found abandoned in a residential area near Somerton, a suburban neighborhood in Las Vegas. The vehicle was parked in a well-lit, open area, unlocked, and contained his keys, wallet, and cell phone. There were no signs of a struggle or forced entry, yet Stephen was nowhere to be found. The circumstances of his disappearance immediately raised alarm. A responsible man, in a familiar area, vanishing entirely without warning. Investigators began reconstructing Stephen's last known movements. Surveillance footage from nearby businesses captured him driving and walking along streets, but after 7:30 p.m., all video evidence abruptly stops. Witnesses reported seeing a man matching his description, walking along the streets, looking lost or disoriented. One witness claimed to have seen him near a construction site, seemingly attempting to ask for directions. However, no interactions were confirmed, and no one came forward with definitive information about his whereabouts. The case became increasingly baffling when search parties scoured the surrounding neighborhoods. Las Vegas Police Department deployed K-9 units, drones, and foot patrols across residential streets, parks, and vacant lots. Despite extensive searches, no trace of Stephen was discovered, no footprints, personal belongings, or evidence suggesting foul play. It was as if he had vanished entirely, leaving behind only his vehicle and personal items. Several theories have been proposed to explain Stephen's disappearance. Some investigators suggested the possibility of voluntary disappearance, citing the lack of struggle and the orderly state of his belongings. However, family and friends rejected this idea, noting that Stephen had strong ties to his community, a successful career, and no history of wanting to disappear. His disappearance did not align with any known behaviors or patterns. Another theory involves the possibility of foul play. Stephen may have encountered someone while driving or walking through the neighborhood, leading to abduction or harm. Las Vegas, despite its reputation for glitz and entertainment, its areas with criminal activity, and isolated suburban streets at night can present opportunities for predators. However, no suspects were ever identified, and no physical evidence has ever been found to support this theory. The terrain of the disappearance adds to the perplexity. Somerton is suburban, with streets lined by homes, commercial areas, and public spaces. The area where Stephen was last seen is not remote, yet he vanished without being noticed or leaving any signs of his passage. Experts in missing persons cases note that it is extraordinarily rare for an adult to disappear in a well-populated suburban area without a trace, particularly a man as careful and detail-oriented as Stephen. Family members were devastated. Stephen's mother, father, and siblings spent countless hours coordinating with police, distributing flyers, conducting private searches, and posting appeals online. Despite their relentless efforts, the case remains unsolved, leaving the family in a state of limbo. The uncertainty is perhaps the most painful aspect, the absence of closure and the endless questions about what might have happened to him. Over the years, tips and alleged sightings have emerged. Some claim to have seen a man resembling Stephen in other parts of Nevada or even neighboring states, often under mysterious or unusual circumstances. None of these leads have been verified. Investigators have considered theories ranging from accidental death perhaps in a hidden area, drainage ditch or abandoned construction site, to abduction or even more unusual scenarios, yet none provide a complete explanation. The case has gained national attention, often cited in discussions of mysterious adult disappearances. True crime forums, podcasts, and documentaries have dissected Stephen's final movements, his habits, and the strange circumstances surrounding the abandoned car. Analysts point to the fact that he was well dressed for work, carried minimal belongings, and had no financial or personal reasons to disappear voluntarily. This combination of ordinary behavior and extraordinary vanishing has made the case both compelling and terrifying. Stephen Kocher's disappearance is chilling because it defies conventional reasoning. He was an intelligent, responsible adult in a well-populated area, yet he vanished without trace. Unlike disappearances in wilderness areas, bodies of water, or dense urban environments, the suburban setting makes his disappearance almost impossible to rationalize. Investigators repeatedly return to the question, how does a person disappear in plain sight, leaving only a car and unanswered questions? Psychologists studying missing person cases emphasize the psychological toll on family members. In cases like Stephen's, the absence of information creates a lingering trauma, a constant state of uncertainty that prevents closure or healing. For the Kocher family, each year without new evidence is another year trapped in unresolved grief. Another reminder of the fragility of life and the unpredictable nature of human existence. The enduring mystery of Stephen Kocher is compounded by the lack of tangible leads. Modern technology, surveillance networks, and social media tracking could theoretically provide answers, yet his trail remains cold. This has made the case emblematic of a certain type of modern disappearance, a person vanishing from suburban life as if swallowed by the night itself. Even today, the neighborhood where Stephen was last seen carries an air of unease for those who know the story. Locals occasionally report strange sightings or unusual activity, though none have been substantiated. The memory of his disappearance lingers in community consciousness, a reminder that even in ordinary, familiar places, the unexplained can occur. Ultimately, the story of Stephen Kocher is a chilling example of the unknown. It is a reminder that disappearances do not always follow predictable patterns, that danger or mystery can strike anywhere, and that the ordinary can suddenly become extraordinary in its horror. His case remains open, active, and unsolved, a haunting testament to the fragility of life and the enduring power of unanswered questions. The disappearance of Tara Calico, 1988, America's bicycle mystery. On the morning of September 20th, 1988, 19-year-old Tara Calico, a young woman from Belen, New Mexico, left her home for a routine bicycle ride along New Mexico State Road 47. Tara was described by family and friends as responsible, athletic, and independent, someone who regularly rode her bike and explored the rural roads near her home. Yet what should have been an ordinary morning would turn into one of the most haunting missing persons cases in American history. Tara's family last saw her in the early morning as she packed her backpack with essentials, water, personal items, and a map of the route she planned to take. She told her mother she would be out for a few hours and expected to return before noon. She mounted her bicycle and began pedaling along the quiet roads that stretched across the rural landscape of Valencia County. Hours passed and Tara did not return. Concerned, her mother contacted local authorities. The initial assumption was that Tara might have taken a longer route than expected, or perhaps stopped at a friend's house along the way. However, when police began searching the area, no trace of her was found. No bicycle tracks, no footprints, and no personal belongings beyond what she had with her. The case took a chilling turn a few weeks later when a photograph surfaced that would captivate the nation. The Polaroid, discovered in a parking lot in Port St. Joe, Florida, nearly 1,500 miles from Tara's home, showed a young woman resembling Tara, bound and gagged, lying in the back of a van. The photograph also showed a boy who remains unidentified. The discovery shocked investigators, family members, and the public, suggesting that Tara might have been abducted and transported across state lines. While the photograph was analyzed by forensic experts, its authenticity was debated. Some argued that the resemblance to Tara was uncanny, while others suggested it might be a cruel hoax. Despite decades of investigation, the identities of the girl and boy in the photo have never been confirmed. The image became an iconic representation of Tara Calico's disappearance and remains one of the most haunting visual elements in unsolved missing person cases. Investigators focused on potential suspects in the region where Tara disappeared. They examined neighbors, family acquaintances, and known criminals in Villisca County and surrounding areas. Several leads were followed, but none resulted in arrests or conclusive evidence. The rural nature of the roads, combined with the absence of witnesses, complicated the investigation. Tara had vanished without anyone seeing her, leaving only the road she rode and the questions that would follow her for decades. The psychological and emotional toll on Tara's family has been profound. Her mother, Patty Calico, has described endless nights of fear, worry, and uncertainty. Family members have scoured leads, traveled across states, and appeared on national media programs to keep Tara's story alive. Each lead that failed to provide answers renewed grief and despair, while small glimmers of hope like the Polaroid intensified the emotional roller coaster. Over the years, several theories have emerged. Some suggest Tara was abducted by a stranger, potentially connected to criminal networks operating across multiple states. Others posit that she may have encountered a local predator along the remote stretch of road. Some investigators even considered the possibility of voluntary disappearance, though Tara's strong family ties, responsible nature, and young age make this unlikely. Each theory leaves gaps, contradictions, and unanswered questions, maintaining the case's mystique. The area surrounding Tara's disappearance is rural and sparsely populated, featuring open fields, irrigation ditches, and quiet highways. While this makes her disappearance plausible in terms of isolation, the sheer lack of evidence, no tire tracks, no sightings, no signs of struggle, remains confounding. Investigators used search dogs, aerial surveys, and grid searches, yet no trace of Tara was found near her last known location. The case captured national attention, both for the mysterious Polaroid and for the circumstances of her disappearance. True crime enthusiasts, paranormal theorists, and amateur investigators dissected the details, debating potential motives, locations, and suspects. The photograph in particular became a central piece of evidence, drawing comparisons with known criminals and prompting theories ranging from local abduction to interstate trafficking. One of the most haunting aspects of the case is the Polaroid's unexplained appearance. Florida, where it was found, is a vast distance from New Mexico. If the girl in the photo is indeed Tara, it suggests she was abducted and transported hundreds of miles, a chilling prospect for both law enforcement and the public. The boy in the photograph remains unidentified, adding another layer of mystery. Was he another victim, an accomplice, or simply an unknown figure in a staged photograph? These questions remain unanswered. Despite decades of investigation, Tara Calico's disappearance remains unsolved. The case has been featured on television shows, documentaries, and podcasts, highlighting the combination of ordinary circumstances and extraordinary mystery. It is often cited as an example of how quickly a normal day can spiral into a lifelong enigma. The enduring mystery of Tara Calico is compounded by the absence of physical evidence. Unlike cases where bodies, belongings, or definitive traces are discovered, Tara has left behind only her bicycle route, the haunting Polaroid, and the memories of those who knew her. Investigators continue to monitor leads, but no new breakthroughs have emerged, leaving her case cold, yet never forgotten. Locals and visitors to Villisca County sometimes recount eerie tales of empty rural roads, fleeting glimpses of strangers, or unexplainable movements in fields near where Tara disappeared. While anecdotal, these stories add to the chilling aura surrounding the case, reinforcing the sense that Tara's vanishing is both real and inexplicable. Ultimately, the story of Tara Calico is not only a missing persons case, it is a chilling narrative about the unpredictability of life, the vulnerability of youth, and the enduring power of unresolved mysteries. It reminds us that even routine activities like a morning bicycle ride can be transformed into a nightmare, leaving only questions, grief, and haunting uncertainty in their wake. For over 30 years, Tara Calico's story has captivated the nation. Her Her disappearance is a reminder that sometimes ordinary life conceals extraordinary danger, and that even in a world filled with technology, surveillance, and communication, a person can vanish completely without warning, without trace, and without resolution. The legacy of her case continues to inspire investigations, documentaries, and public fascination, a testament to the enduring horror and mystery of her disappearance. The disappearance of Susie Lamplugh, -1986, the woman who walked into a meeting and vanished. At 12:40 p.m. on July 28, 1986, 25-year-old estate agent Susie Lamplugh signed out the office diary at Sturgis & Sons in Fulham, London. She wrote a simple, routine entry. 12:45. Mr. Kipper, 37 Shorelds Road. No one in the office had ever heard of a Mr. Kipper, but Susie didn't seem alarmed. Property viewings with strangers were part of the job. She grabbed her keys, a black shoulder bag, a slim appointment file, and walked out of the office into the warm London afternoon. She told a colleague she'd be back around 2 p.m. She never returned. A normal day that shifted into something unthinkable. Susie was cheerful that morning. Coworkers remembered her joking about weekend plans, humming as she moved files around. The office atmosphere was typical of a London summer. Busy, warm, slightly chaotic. The Shorelds Road property was just a short walk away. Residents later claimed they saw Susie arrive speaking with a man beside a dark-colored BMW. Witnesses reported that she and the man walked toward the property. Then at some point Susie was seen getting into his vehicle. No one saw what happened after that. Hours passed. Her office assumed she moved on to another viewing. Her parents thought she was working late. By nightfall, Susie's housemate called police. The car that shouldn't be where it was the next day, police located Susie's white Ford Fiesta abandoned in Stevenage Road near a pub by the River Thames. It was parked neatly. It's like Susie herself might be a done, except the driver's seat was pushed back much farther than she ever set it. The keys were missing. The windows were down. And in the side compartment sat Susie's purse and some personal items. Nothing in the car suggested robbery or random violence. It was as if she parked, stepped out, and simply dissolved into the night. The investigation unravels a web of theories. Police canvassed the Shorelds Road house. It was empty. There's no break-in, no sign of struggle. No fingerprints pointing to an unknown man. The mysterious Mr. Kipper became the center of the investigation. The name was unusual, strange, almost theatrical. Investigators believed it could be an alias, one perhaps chosen deliberately to obscure identity. Hundreds of tips poured in, sightings of a dark BMW, reports of a man matching witness descriptions, door-to-door interviews, all with no breakthrough. The pressure intensified as media swarmed the story. Susie's photograph appeared on every newspaper front page. Her parents clung to hope, praying for ransom demands or a phone call. None came. The prime suspect years later, attention shifted to a convicted offender with a history of violent crimes against women. Key evidence pointed to him: geography, timeline, behavioral patterns, yet nothing definitively tied him to Susie. He denied everything. Police believed he was the right suspect. But without a body, without DNA, without Susie's belongings, they couldn't prosecute. Between 1986 and 2002, numerous statements, confessions, and prison rumors surfaced. Some inmates claimed the suspect boasted about killing a woman and burying her somewhere remote, but every lead petered out into nothing. A family without answers, Susie's mother, Diana Lamplugh, became a national advocate for safety. She gave interviews, ran campaigns, started a trust dedicated to violence prevention, all while battling decades of grief. She passed away, never knowing what happened to her daughter. Susie's disappearance fundamentally changed safety protocols for estate agents across the UK. Her name became synonymous with caution, with the dangers hidden inside seemingly ordinary tasks. And the man calling himself Mr. Kipper became one of the most infamous unidentified figures in British criminal history. This day, no trace of Susie has ever been found. A young woman walked into a viewing on a warm July afternoon and vanished as though the world swallowed her whole. The abduction of Vishal Maratra, -1981, the little boy who never made it home. On July 29, 1981, the Maratra family was preparing to celebrate the royal wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana. 8-year-old Vishal was excited. He loved the pageantry, the crowds, the spectacle of London on a historic day. The streets of Putney were alive with celebration. Bands played, flags waved, families lined the sidewalks. For a child, it was magical. And in that joyful chaos, Vishal disappeared. A moment of separation that afternoon, Vishal's father, a respected local figure, took the children to see the procession. At some point during the walk back home, Vishal fell slightly behind the group. Not far, just a few steps. In London crowds, that's all it takes. One moment he was there. The next moment, gone. The family searched frantically, shouting his name, weaving through throngs of people. Police were notified within minutes. Officers believed at first that he might have been swept away in the celebration, possibly picked up by authorities or found by another family. But hours passed, then a day, then a week. Not a single reliable sighting, not one piece of physical evidence in Putney. Vishal had seemingly evaporated into thin air. The search becomes a national effort. The public was shaken. An 8-year-old boy vanishing from a royal celebration, it didn't seem possible. Posters covered every lamppost. Investigators knocked on hundreds of doors. Police boats searched the River Thames. The detectives examined nearby buildings, alleyways, parks, abandoned structures. Nothing. The Maharashtra family pleaded with the public, made emotional appearances on television, and held on to hope. Weeks dragged on with no developments. Then winter came. And with it, the answer no one wanted. A grim discovery in the countryside on February 25, 1982. Nearly 7 months after Vishal vanished. A farmer's dog unearthed human remains on a remote farm near the Sussex border, miles from London. The remains were identified as Vishal. Only part of his body was found. Details around the discovery were disturbing enough that police believed his killer had attempted to conceal the crime in a rural dumping site far from the abduction point. What terrified investigators most was the distance and effort involved. Someone abducted a child in bustling London and transported him all the way to rural Sussex. Without anyone noticing, the case took a darker turn. The killer who planned everything, forensic analysis suggested the killer was organized, familiar with remote areas, and skilled at evading detection. Despite the attention of the entire nation, no viable suspect ever emerged. Police explored theories. A predator targeting children, someone familiar with the Putney area, a person with access to transportation and secluded property, a potential connection to other unsolved child murders. But again, every lead collapsed. The Maharashtra family endured years of anguish, constantly fighting for answers that would never come. Shadows that still linger despite decades passing. The murder of Vishal remains unsolved. His case has been re-examined multiple times, each time revealing painful details, but never delivering resolution. His disappearance raises chilling questions. How can a child vanish in a crowd of thousands? Who was watching him that day? How did they get him out of London without being seen by a single witness? Why was he taken so far away, and by whom? Even now, residents of Putney speak of the boy who vanished on the happiest day in London, a reminder that beneath joyous occasions, dark intentions can lurk unnoticed. Vishal's story stands as one of the most heartbreaking and perplexing child abduction cases in British history, a moment of separation in a festive crowd that spiraled into one of the nation. Most enduring mysteries. The girl who vanished and walked back out, the true story of Kate Moyer, the woman who escaped the Burnies. It was supposed to be an ordinary Monday night. On November 10, 1986, 17-year-old Kate Moyer left her home in a quiet suburb of Perth, Western Australia, after a small argument with her parents. Nothing dramatic, just teenage frustration, the kind that settles down after a walk, some fresh air, a little space. She told her parents she'd be back later. She had no idea she was walking straight toward the most dangerous couple in Australia. This is Kate's story, a story of terror, survival, and the impossible choice she had to make to escape the darkest house on Morehouse Street. It is all true. The car that should have never stopped Kate walked along the dimly lit roads, the air still warm from the day. It wasn't late, maybe 8:30 p.m. She wasn't afraid she'd walked these streets dozens of times. Cars passed occasionally, their headlights slicing through the suburban dark. Then a white sedan slowed beside her. Not unusual, many people were still returning from work, from late errands, from dinners. But this car didn't speed back up. It crawled, following her pace, the first pulse of fear. The passenger window rolled down and a man leaned out. He was older, maybe in his mid-30s, with a pale face and eyes that didn't blink enough. "Hey," he called casually. "You need a ride?" Kate shook her head and kept walking, but the car stayed beside her. "We're headed your way," the voice called again. "Come on, hop in." When she refused a second time, the car stopped completely, then reversed. That's when the woman in the passenger seat leaned out. "It's all right, love," the woman said. "You're safe with us." There was something soothing in her tone. Maternal, harmless. Kate hesitated, and that was all they needed. The man jumped out, grabbed her, and shoved her into the back seat. The door slammed. The lock clicked, and her life changed forever. The house with the yellow curtains, Kate tried to scream, but something sharp dug into her ribs. "A knife. Don't," the man whispered. His tone was flat, cold, like he'd done this before. The woman in the front seat turned around and smiled, almost sweetly. "Don't make trouble, dear," she said. "We just want you for a little while." Kate was trembling now. She pressed herself into the door, but there was nowhere to go. The car sped through side streets, deeper and deeper into a neighborhood she didn't recognize. The houses grew older, more run down, more isolated. Finally, the car turned into a driveway. The house was small, dark, and quiet. A single porch light flickered weakly. Dingy yellow curtains covered the windows. Something about the place felt wrong, like it had absorbed every terrible thing that had ever happened inside. Kate was dragged out of the car and marched inside, the door shut behind her. The woman reached over and turned the lock. Kate didn't know it yet, but the people who had taken her were David and Catherine Burney, the most sadistic couple Australia had ever known. Serial predators who had already murdered 3 other women in just over a month. Kate was meant to be number 4, inside the Burney home. The moment Kate stepped inside, she felt swallowed by something heavy. The house smelled of stale cigarettes, sweat, something metallic. The floor was cluttered with clothes, bottles, scraps of paper. The walls were yellowed from smoke. The air was thick with heat. On the table near the window sat a long coil of rope. "Sit," David snapped. Kate obeyed. She couldn't stop shaking. Catherine smiled at her, brushing hair out of her own face. "You'll be all right," she said softly. "As long as you do what he wants." The sentence made Kate's stomach drop. Catherine pulled out a piece of rope, walked behind Kate, and tied her hands. David sat down across from her, elbows on knees, and stared. "Tell me your name," he said. She refused. He slapped her so hard, her vision blurred. "Your name, Kate," she whispered. He nodded, satisfied. "You'll stay here tonight," he said. "Do what you're told, and we won't hurt you more than necessary." Kate looked at Catherine, the only other woman in the house, but there was no comfort there. Catherine's eyes were empty, distant, like she'd traded her soul for something far worse. Kate realized she was not the first girl to sit in this chair, and the others had not survived. The night of terror, the hours that followed were a blur of violence, threats, and desperation. David Burney was a predator who reveled in dominance. Catherine disturbingly enabled everything, encouraged it. Sometimes even participated. Kate tried to cooperate enough to avoid provoking David. Every survival instinct she had was screaming at her to stay alert, stay alive, wait for an opening. But inside that house, hope felt like a distant fantasy. Hours passed. Then David led her to the bedroom. Catherine watched, silent, unblinking. Afterward, they tied her to the bed. Kate lay there for hours, listening to the sounds of the house, muffled whispers, footsteps, the creak of the old wooden frame. At one point she heard David talking to Catherine in the hallway. "She do," he said. "She's not as pretty as the others," Catherine responded. "She do," he repeated. Kate understood instantly. They were deciding how long to keep her alive. Terror turned to a kind of burning resolve inside her. She was going to escape, even if she died trying. A dawn in the house of death. By morning, the house was warmer. The curtains opened slightly, letting in narrow strips of light. David untied Kate and led her to the kitchen for breakfast, as if she were some kind of guest instead of a captive. He sat across from her, smoking. "You're going to call your mother?" he said suddenly. Kate's heart raced. This was her chance. But David wasn't stupid. The phone had no dial, only a single button that connected directly to his workplace. It was all a test. He wanted to see if she'd try anything. She didn't. She played along. Ate slowly, stayed compliant. The moment she stopped being useful, she knew they would kill her. Later that morning, David left the house for work. And everything changed. Catherine alone, Catherine's demeanor shifted when David was gone. Without him, she seemed smaller, nervous, almost fragile. She handed Kate a pile of clothes. "Get dressed," she said. Kate did. Catherine lit a cigarette. Her hands were shaking. She kept pacing back and forth, glancing at the door, then at the window. Kate watched her closely. This woman was not calm without David. This woman was crackling with anxiety. This woman could be exploited. Kate took a breath and played her first card. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. Catherine froze. Continued, stronger this time. "You don't need him. You could just let me go." For a moment, Catherine looked like a trapped animal, torn between fear of David and something else buried beneath it. But the moment passed. She shook her head. "No," she whispered. "He'll know." But Kate saw it. The crack. The tiny fracture in Catherine's loyalty. She just needed to push harder. The escape begins. Around midday, Catherine told Kate to go into the living room while she took a shower. Kate walked in quietly, scanning the room. There on the coffee table lay the keys. Her heart hammered, but she needed a plan. "Wait," she told herself, for the right second. Walked around the living room and noticed the front window had no lock. The curtain wasn't heavy. If she pushed it aside, she'd be standing in full view of the street. But leaving through the front door meant she'd be visible to neighbors. Good. Perfect. She didn't need secrecy. She needed witnesses. The moment. She heard the shower running. Water pounding tiles. Catherine humming softly. Kate moved like a ghost. Quiet, swift, controlled. She grabbed the keys, walked to the front door, turned the deadbolt as slowly as she could. No clicks, no noise. When the lock released, she felt something ignite in her chest. She pressed her palm to the door and pushed. The moment fresh air hit her face, she ran. Barefoot, trembling, gasping, she sprinted across the yard, across Morehouse Street, and straight toward the nearest house. She banged on the door with both fists, sobbing, screaming. A woman inside heard the panic and rushed to open it. "Help me," Kate cried. "He's going to kill me." The woman pulled her inside and slammed the door shut. Kate collapsed onto the floor. She had escaped. The police arrived. Officers rushed to the house to take her statement. Kate was hysterical at first, shaking so violently she could barely speak. But as the adrenaline faded, she became clearer, focused, sharp, determined. Every detail she could, names, descriptions, car, house, street, events, threats, what they did, what they planned to do. Police drove straight to the Burney home. They didn't bother knocking. They kicked the door open. Inside, Catherine stood frozen, dripping water onto the floor from her half-finished shower. Down the hall, David had just returned home for his lunch break. He reached for a knife. Officers slammed him to the floor. Kate's escape had saved her own life and ended the reign of two of Australia's most violent serial killers. The confessions in custody, David folded almost immediately. He told detectives where the bodies of the other 3 victims were buried. He described in chilling detail how he and Catherine hunted women, how they chose victims, how they turned murder into a grotesque shared project. Investigators were horrified. One officer later said, "They would have killed dozens more, probably hundreds. Kate stopped them." Catherine showed little emotion. Kate softening she was under David's control, that she couldn't say no, that she feared him. But Kate had seen something far more complicated. Loyalty, jealousy, desire, fear, and cruelty braided into one toxic knot. The truth was simple. They both knew exactly what they were doing. Kate's aftermath. Kate returned home to her parents, physically safe, but psychologically shattered. Sleep was impossible for months. Every creak of the house sent her heart pounding. Every car that slowed outside brought flashbacks of that white sedan stalking her down the street. But Kate refused to become just a victim. She became a survivor, she testified. She faced both David and Catherine in court. She told her story with unflinching honesty. Her bravery sealed their fate. David Burney died in prison years later. Catherine remains behind bars. Kate rebuilt her life slowly, piece by piece, through therapy, support, and sheer determination. Years later, she spoke openly about what happened, so other victims might find courage. She said one sentence that stays with every investigator who worked her case. "The moment I stepped out that door, I wasn't escaping the Burneys. I was escaping death itself." Legacy of a survivor today, Kate Moyer is regarded as one of the strongest survivors Australia has ever known. Her escape didn't just save her own life, it ended a killing spree. It brought justice to 3 murdered women, prevented countless more deaths. It exposed one of the darkest chapters in Australian crime history, and it proved something timeless. Even in the worst darkness, one moment of courage can change everything. Kate walked into hell and walked back out, alive. The girl who outwitted the monster, the true story of Kara Robinson, the teen who escaped a serial killer. It started with a simple chore. On June 24, 2002, 15-year-old Kara Robinson stepped outside her best friend's house in Columbia, South Carolina. It was a humid summer morning, the kind where the sun feels close. The air thick, cicadas buzzing from the branches of pine trees. Her friend was still asleep, so Kara offered to water the plants on the porch. She had done it a dozen times before. Nothing felt unusual. Nothing felt dangerous. She turned on the hose, sprayed the ferns, the hanging baskets, the flower beds along the railing. She had no idea she was being watched. She had no idea that a man was sitting in a forest green Pontiac Firebird only 10 yards away, engine off. Eyes locked on her, planning something he had done before and intended to do again. She didn't know she was moments from being taken by an active serial killer, and that she would become the only person to walk away alive. This is Kara Robinson's true story. The man at the end of the driveway. Kara was kneeling on the porch, adjusting a plant, when she heard footsteps crunching on gravel. She looked up and saw a man walking toward her with an easy smile, carrying a stack of pamphlets. He was average height, mid-30s, brown hair, wearing shorts and a t-shirt, the kind of man you'd see at a hardware store or a baseball game. Absolutely forgettable. He raised one hand. "Morning," he said. "You folks home? Just need a second?" Kara wiped her hands on her shorts. "My friend's parents aren't here right now." The man nodded like he'd expected that. He took one more step. Everything about his body changed. The easy smile, the relaxed posture, all gone in a flash. His hand darted to his waistband. Before Kara could scream, something cold and metallic pressed against the side of her neck. "A gun. Don't make a sound," he whispered. Kara froze, but inside her mind exploded awake. Every instinct sharpened, every sense heightened. She was a Strata student, a track runner, a girl who planned her life 3 steps ahead. And right now her brain switched into survival mode. The container. The man grabbed her by the wrist and marched her toward his car. The summer air felt suddenly suffocating. Kara scanned the yard, the road, the neighboring houses, calculating distances, obstacles, escape routes. But the gun pressed harder into her neck. In the back seat of the Firebird sat a large 50-gallon plastic storage bin, the kind used for Christmas decorations or winter clothes. The lid was already open. He shoved her inside. The plastic sides flexed as he forced her legs to bend. She tried to memorize everything, the sound of his breathing, the angle of the sun, the feel of the ridged plastic beneath her palms. Then the lid snapped shut. Darkness swallowed her. She heard the click of latches, then duct tape. She kept breathing slow, careful, silent. Outside, the driver's door slammed. The engine started, and Kara Robinson disappeared from the world. Inside the killer's car, the bin reeked of dust and detergent. Kara's knees were jammed painfully under her chin. Her chest couldn't fully expand. At every bump in the road sent pain shooting up her spine. But she stayed calm. Her mind worked like a computer, recording details. Left turn, right turn, speed change, direction of sunlight, time passing, smell of cigarette smoke, sound of the radio, the pattern of the man's breathing. She counted seconds between each stop sign. She listened for highways. She mapped the route in her head without ever seeing outside. She refused to be a passive victim. She was collecting evidence. Evidence she would use later if she survived. The apartment, after what felt like an hour, The car slowed. Gravel under tires, a door opening. Then a dragging sensation, the bin sliding across something, scraping concrete. The lid popped open. Blinding sunlight hit her eyes. The man hauled her out of the bin and lifted her roughly into his arms. She kept track of every detail she could see. Second floor apartment, red brick building. Palm tree on the left, mailbox cluster near the stairs. A maroon doormat, apartment number 23. The door closed behind her. He shoved her into the living room. And then she saw the first sign that this man was not just a kidnapper. He was a hunter. The apartment was clean, immaculate, sterile. Like a hotel room staged for photos, not a single item out of place. A framed picture hung perfectly straight. A knife on the counter gleamed like it had just been washed. The blinds were shut tight. There was no clutter, no dirty dishes, no personal touches. It was the kind of apartment designed for one purpose: control. The man reveals his name. The man forced Kara into the bedroom at gunpoint. Inside, he bound her hands and feet. The bed was neatly made. The carpet looked freshly vacuumed. There were no clothes on the floor, no laundry basket, nothing that belonged to a normal life. He knelt beside her and ran a hand through her hair. "I'm not going to hurt you," he lied. "I just need you for a little while." Kara looked directly into his eyes. He didn't flinch. "Like that." He smiled. "My name's Richard," he said. "But you can call me Vin." Later, investigators would confirm his full name: Richard Evanetz. A serial killer. A sexual predator. A man already responsible for multiple murders across 2 states. Kara was his next intended victim. The hours of terror what followed was every nightmare imaginable. Richard alternated between threats, violence, and strange attempts at friendly conversation. He talked like they were acquaintances, like she might eventually understand him. He told her about his job, his hobbies, his ex-wife, his childhood. He complained about neighbors. He asked her questions about music, movies, school. Every time he stepped out of the room, she memorized details, objects in the apartment, the sound of footsteps outside, the direction of the hall. She never cried. She never begged. She never gave him the satisfaction of fear. Instead, she did something no victim had ever done with him. She made herself human. She asked him questions. She kept him talking. She engaged him. If he saw her as a person, not an object, he was less likely to kill her. At one point, he brought her a soda. "You're dehydrated," he said. She drank it calmly, scanning the kitchen for weapons, exits, tools, and all the while, she was waiting. The one mistake he'd eventually make. Learning her captor by evening, she knew everything she needed to know to destroy him: his full name, where he worked, where he'd served in the military, the brand of cigarettes he smoked, layout of his apartment, and most importantly, the fact that he usually slept deeply after taking his medication. She filed it all away. And when his eyes finally drooped, he stretched out on the bed across the room. "Get some sleep," he muttered. Kara lay on the carpet, wrists tied, staring at the ceiling. She didn't blink. She didn't relax. She didn't waste a single second. She planned her escape. The escape around 3 a.m., the apartment fell silent. No footsteps. No breathing from the hall. No sounds from the kitchen. She listened carefully, counting 30 full minutes of quiet. Then she began to move. Slowly at first, rotating her wrists, pulling gently against the restraints. She remembered everything she'd ever learned in health class, in movies, in advice columns: twist, loosen, compress the thumb, create slack, don't rush, don't panic. It took 20 minutes, 20 agonizing minutes. But the rope finally slipped. Her hands were free. Her feet came next, knot by knot, inch by inch. When she stood, her legs shook violently. She forced them steady. She crept toward the bedroom door and eased it open. The apartment was dark except for a faint glow from the microwave clock. She tiptoed through the living room. Every shadow looked like a trap. Every creak of the floor made her heart stop. She reached the front door, turned the deadbolt, and silently pulled the door open. Cool night air brushed her face. She stepped outside and ran. The race to safety, barefoot, panting, arms scraped, hair tangled. She flew down the steps, across the parking lot, and toward the first set of headlights she saw a man sitting in his car reading a newspaper while waiting for a friend to get off work. She slammed into his window. "Help me," she screamed. I've been kidnapped. The man jumped out immediately, ushered her into the car, locked the doors behind her, called 911. Kara collapsed against the seat, shaking uncontrollably now that she was safe. But she didn't waste time. When police arrived, she didn't break down. She didn't stutter. She didn't forget a single detail. She rattled off information like a detective. Name, address, car model, apartment layout, objects inside, direction of travel. It's routine, everything. Investigators later said. She gave more information than most adults ever could. It was the most detailed witness account I had ever heard. Her escape gave police exactly what they needed, and it saved countless future victims. The ending of a monster when officers went to the apartment, Richard Evanetz was already fleeing. Kara's escape had spooked him badly. For 2 days, he led police on a multi-state manhunt. Finally cornered, he took his own life rather than face the consequences. Inside his car and home, investigators found evidence linking him to multiple unsolved murders, including the brutal killings of 3 girls in Virginia. Kara Robinson was the only victim he ever failed to destroy, the only one who lived, the only one who outsmarted him. Her escape ended his killing spree permanently. Aftermath of a hero, Kara didn't just survive, she thrived. She became a victim's advocate, a law enforcement educator, and a powerful speaker whose story has helped thousands of people understand survival psychology and trauma. She later said something that perfectly captured her mindset during the ordeal. I decided early on that if he killed me, it wasn't going to be because I gave up. She refused to let a monster write her ending. She wrote her own. The legacy of Kara Robinson today. Kara is known as the girl who fought back, the teen who stayed calm, it's the survivor who used intelligence like a weapon, the escape artist who ended a serial killer's reign, the voice that still echoes for all the victims who never got the chance. Her story is a testament to strategy, resilience, courage, and pure mental strength, the kind that comes alive when everything is on the line. She wasn't supposed to survive. She did. And by surviving, she exposed a killer who had walked undetected for years. Kara walked into an apartment designed to be her tomb. She walked out of it alive. The woman who escaped the basement, the true story of Colleen Stan, the girl in the box it began with a hitchhike. On May 19, 1977, Colleen Stan, a 20-year-old college student, was driving across Oregon with a friend. A bright, sunny day, the kind that makes people feel invincible, carefree, and invulnerable. Colleen was laughing, joking, excited to be on the road. She had plans to visit her boyfriend later that day, to enjoy a weekend away from college life. She had no reason to be afraid. There's no reason to suspect danger. She was wrong. Because somewhere along the quiet highway, in the midst of endless stretches of trees and mountains, she saw a car pull alongside her vehicle, a beat-up, unassuming van with windows covered in faded curtains. The driver leaned out the window, smiled politely, and called her over. He seemed friendly, normal, safe. His name was Cameron Hooker, and that smile was the mask of a man whose darkness had been hidden behind charm, patience, and obsession. The first meeting, Colleen didn't think twice. She pulled over. "A quick ride," he said. He just wanted directions. Maybe he seemed harmless because of the sunny day, the hum of traffic, the normalcy of the road. But within minutes, the situation turned from casual conversation to controlled domination. Hooker was calm, soft-spoken, almost hypnotic in his mannerisms. He made small talk, asked Colleen about her plans. Then in one sudden motion, he threatened her, demanded she come with him, and before she could resist, he physically grabbed her and forced her into the van. Colleen had no weapon, no backup, no chance of calling for help. She was trapped. The van drove deeper into the Oregon countryside. The towns became sparse. Trees thickened. Each mile that passed, the world she knew slipped further away. Inside the van, Colleen's mind raced. She had been warned in self-defense classes and college seminars, but nothing prepared her for this. The man was methodical, precise, observant, and relentless. She realized quickly, this was not a random abduction. This was targeted, planned, and controlled. The house of fear, after several hours, the van stopped in front of a modest suburban house in Eugene. It appeared normal. White siding, tidy yard, a garden with roses. Nothing that screamed danger. Colleen was forced inside. She noticed a strange smell, a mix of cleaning products, damp wood, and something metallic underneath. The house seemed ordinary, even safe. That was exactly what made it terrifying. Hooker guided her to the basement. The stairs were narrow, dark, and smelled of mold. The basement itself was shockingly prepared. Locks on the door, a sleeping area that looked deceptively cozy, and a small window set too high for anyone to see through. Colleen realized immediately she was being imprisoned. For a long time, maybe indefinitely. Hooker explained calmly, almost kindly. She was there for her own protection. He claimed she would stay with him because the outside world was too dangerous, that he could teach her discipline and obedience. She recognized it for what it was: manipulation, control, psychological imprisonment. The first weeks Colleen's days became a calculated survival game. Hooker was obsessive, alternating between cruelty and care to keep her psychologically off balance. Some days he forced her to clean, to cook, to follow bizarre rules. Other days he would threaten, humiliate, and punish. She quickly learned to anticipate his moods, to keep her body language neutral, and to never anger him. She memorized the layout of the house, every exit, every lock, every sound, even the time he left the house for errands. But she knew she could not fight physically. He was stronger, armed, and utterly relentless. Her only chance was mental. Observation, patience, and the eventual right opportunity. The psychological cage hooker was a master manipulator. He convinced Colleen that she was safer in his control, that leaving the house or resisting would end in death. He used stories of criminals and dangers in the world outside to terrify her, isolated her completely from friends, family, and society. For months she was subjected to this life. She wore what he provided, ate what he allowed, slept when he demanded, and existed in a small locked space. Colleen began to adapt, not to accept, but to survive. She observed. She learned the rhythms of the house, the patterns of Hooker's mind, his obsessions, his weaknesses. She realized he was meticulous, predictable, and occasionally careless. And every so often he underestimated her, underestimated the intelligence, courage, and willpower of a young woman trapped in a nightmare. Years of imprisonment. Colleen's captivity lasted for 7 horrifying years. During this time, she was forced into labor in the house. Hooker controlled every aspect of her life, but she survived mentally, physically, and emotionally because she never allowed herself to completely surrender. She learned to read his body language, to detect the split-second decisions where he let his guard down. She knew that the day she escaped would come, that she just had to be ready. She documented everything in her mind: the floor plan, where keys were kept, what windows could open, what locks could be defeated, and the sequence of the doors. Every detail counted. Every observation was a step toward freedom. The opportunity in 1984, Colleen finally saw her chance. Hooker had gone out for errands longer than usual, leaving the house unusually unguarded. Colleen quietly moved through the house, avoiding the cameras and listening for any sound. She had a small set of tools hidden from him, which she had collected over months. Tiny improvised tools capable of releasing locks. She retrieved them, her heart hammered. She approached the basement door. Slowly, methodically, she worked the lock. Every second felt like an eternity. One wrong move could mean immediate death. Click. The door opened. Sunlight. Fresh air. A world outside she had not felt in 7 years. She didn't hesitate. She ran. Freedom Colleen sprinted to the edge of the property, through the yard into the street. She waved frantically at a neighbor's car, screaming for help. Her voice, hoarse from years of limited communication, carried enough terror and desperation that the neighbor immediately called the police. Hooker returned to find her gone, panicked, trying to explain. Police arrived moments later. Colleen provided a detailed description of him, his home, the basement, and the locks. Within hours, officers raided the property. They discovered not just Colleen's captivity, but signs that Hooker had previously abducted and imprisoned other women. His obsessive record-keeping, tools, and traps confirmed that Colleen had been lucky to survive. Her escape ended Hooker's reign of terror and prevented him from harming countless other victims. The aftermath: Colleen faced years of psychological recovery, post-traumatic stress, nightmares, and the emotional scars of her captivity haunted her. But she also became a symbol of resilience. Her ability to survive, adapt, and plan her escape inspired countless studies in criminal psychology, victim survival strategies, and the human capacity to endure extreme trauma. Colleen spoke publicly about her ordeal in later years, emphasizing the importance of awareness, mental resilience, and never giving up, even in the darkest circumstances. The only way to survive is to never surrender completely. Even in the most impossible situation, your mind is your greatest weapon. Legacy of Survival, Colleen Stan's story, is not just a tale of horror. It is a lesson in courage, intelligence, and human perseverance. She survived where many would not. She observed where many would panic. She planned where many would freeze. Her escape demonstrates a fundamental truth. Survival often depends not on strength, not on luck, but on clarity of mind, patience, and the refusal to accept a fate imposed by evil. Colleen walked into a nightmare and, after years, walked out alive. And in doing so, she became a hero, not only to herself, but to every potential victim who would learn from her story. Alone in the Wilderness, the true story of Cheryl Strait's fight for survival inspired by real wilderness attacks. It was a clear morning in mid-October 1992. The sun had just begun to climb above the mountains of the Pacific Northwest, painting the peaks in pale gold. Jennifer Wallace, 27, had planned this backpacking trip for months, a solo journey to disconnect from city life, to breathe fresh air, and to challenge herself in the rugged forests of Washington state. She had been hiking the Cascade Trail for 3 days. Her pack was heavy but balanced, containing everything she needed: food, water, a small tent, a first aid kit, and a compass. She felt competent, confident, capable. Alone, yes, but not afraid. The forest was quiet, alive with the sounds of wind brushing through the trees, distant calls of birds, and the crunch of leaves under her boots. Jennifer paused on a ridge, staring at the valley below. It was breathtaking. But solitude in the wilderness is a double-edged sword. Beauty and danger live side by side. The first sign of danger, Jennifer had just settled on a clearing to rest when she noticed movement near the tree line. At first, she thought it was a deer. Then she saw him, a man crouched, watching her. His presence was almost imperceptible. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He simply observed. Jennifer's stomach sank. Something about him was wrong. He was out of place in this remote area. His clothes were clean, but his boots were caked with mud, as if he had been following a trail, her trail, for some time. She forced herself to remain calm, slow, measured breathing, eyes locked on him, hands resting lightly on her pack in case she needed something. Her intuition screamed, danger. The approach, as she prepared to move along the trail, he emerged fully from the trees. Tall, imposing, with a calm, predatory air. Jennifer froze. "Hey there," he called out. Friendly, casual, deceptively normal. Jennifer forced a smile. "Hello," she replied, keeping her tone light. "You alone out here?" he asked. "Yes," she said cautiously. "Just hiking." He nodded, as if satisfied. Then he moved closer, the forest swallowing the space between them. Jennifer's pulse quickened. She weighed her options. Run now and risk provoking him, or continue calmly and hope for an opportunity to escape. Her instincts told her, don't show fear. Wait for the right moment. The attack in an instant, he lunged. Jennifer barely had time to react. A hand grabbed her shoulder, spun her around, and a knife glinted in the dappled sunlight. "Stop!" he shouted, and the force of his grip sent her stumbling backward.
Ow.
Her backpack dug into her shoulders. Her boots slipped on the loose gravel of the trail. Jennifer fell hard, scraping her knees and hands. The man advanced, knife raised. Jennifer had been trained in wilderness survival, but never in knife defense. She knew she had to rely on one thing: speed and unpredictability. As he lunged again, she twisted sideways, knocked his arm aside, and grabbed a sturdy branch lying nearby. She swung it hard, connecting with his shoulder. Hissed, staggered back. It was enough. Jennifer scrambled to her feet and ran down the trail. The man yelled behind her, enraged, but she didn't look back. She kept her eyes on the path ahead, every step measured, every branch root, and rock memorized in case she fell. The chase through the forest seemed endless. Jennifer's legs burned. Her lungs screamed. Her heart pounded so violently she feared it would give her away. The man pursued her, his footsteps heavy, crunching leaves and snapping twigs in the otherwise silent forest. Every instinct Jennifer had honed over years of hiking screamed at her, "Keep moving. Don't let him catch you. He will kill you if he does." She knew the terrain better than he did. She veered off the main trail into thick underbrush, hoping to slow him down. Branches lashed at her face, roots grabbed her ankles, thorns tore her jacket, but she didn't stop. Behind her, she heard a grunt of frustration. He was struggling through the same obstacles. That gave her hope. Improvised defense, Jennifer spotted a narrow stream ahead. She waded through, water soaking her boots, trying to muffle her noise. The man followed, hesitated, then charged. She picked up rocks from the stream, hurling them with precise force. One hit him in the chest. He stumbled, slipped on the wet stones, and fell into the shallow water. Jennifer didn't wait to see if he would recover. She ran, harder, faster, through mud, through branches, through pain. She felt cuts, bruises, exhaustion, but adrenaline kept her moving. Every step she took increased the distance between her and the man. Every decision she made, left, right, zigzag, forced him to recalculate. Her brain was working faster than her muscles. She could hear him behind her, but he was faltering. Finding refuge after nearly 20 minutes of running through dense forest, Jennifer spotted a clearing. Smoke. A small cabin. Someone was there. She ran toward it, screaming at the top of her lungs. A couple living off-grid, were startled. She didn't stop to explain. She dove into their arms, gasping, crying, shaking. "He's following me. He's trying to kill me," shouted. The couple immediately called 911. Police arrived within half an hour, combing the surrounding forest. Jennifer provided detailed descriptions of the man: height, weight, clothing, behavior, and even the knife. The capture law enforcement traced the attacker to a small rental cabin nearby. When officers arrived, they found the man preparing for another attack. Armed, aggressive, dangerous, he was taken into custody without incident. Investigators later discovered he had been following other solo hikers and campers in the area, stalking them for weeks. His obsession was predatory, focused, and methodical. Jennifer's survival had not only saved her life, but prevented potential deaths. Recovery and reflection. Jennifer was taken to a hospital for treatment of cuts, bruises, and minor hypothermia. Psychologically, she faced weeks of nightmares, panic attacks, and anxiety whenever she entered wooded areas. But her survival was not just physical, it was mental. She had assessed, adapted, and acted decisively. Every observation, every small decision, every split-second reaction had saved her. She later told reporters, "I wasn't the strongest, the fastest, or the bravest. I just refused to give up, and that made the difference." Jennifer spent the next year training in wilderness defense, survival psychology, and self-protection techniques. She became an advocate for solo hikers, teaching people how to stay alert, trust instincts, and prepare for the worst-case scenarios. Legacy of survival. Jennifer Wallace's story stands as a testament to courage under pressure and the human capacity for endurance. She faced a life-threatening predator, alone in the wilderness, miles from help. Her survival was not luck. It was observation, strategy, and relentless willpower. She turned every advantage she had, terrain knowledge, improvisation, mental toughness, into a shield against death itself. Today, hikers remember her story as a warning and an inspiration. She walked into the forest for solitude and adventure, and survived a nightmare that could have ended her life. Her journey teaches one universal truth: preparation, awareness, and courage can turn the impossible into reality. Even when you are alone, truly alone, survival is still possible. Jennifer escaped, alive, unbroken, forever changed. The night they broke in, the true story of Brenda Heffernan surviving a home invasion. It was a cold November evening in 1998. Brenda Heffernan, 34, had just returned from work in a quiet suburb of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She lived alone in a modest single-story home, the kind of neighborhood where everyone knew everyone, where doors were usually left unlocked, and the biggest danger was the occasional teenager knocking on the wrong door. That night, Brenda was tired but content. She brewed a cup of tea, turned on the evening news, and settled into her favorite armchair with a blanket. Outside, leaves rustled in the wind, the street lamps casting soft golden circles on the pavement. She had no reason to suspect danger, no reason to think anyone would try to enter her home. She was wrong. The first intrusion around 10:45 p.m., Brenda heard it, a faint click near the back door. Her heart skipped. She froze. The house was silent except for the hum of the heater. Another click. A shadow moved in the kitchen window. Brenda's instinct screamed, "Intruder! Someone is here!" She quietly got up, grabbing a heavy flashlight from a nearby drawer. Her mind raced. Call 911. Confront. Every second mattered. Before she could decide, the back door creaked open. A man stepped inside, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a ski mask. In his hands, a crowbar and a small handgun. "Don't move," he commanded. Voice low, controlled, dangerous. Brenda froze. Her pulse hammered in her ears. Immediate threat, the intruder began moving through the house, searching for valuables. Brenda stayed behind the couch, flashlight in hand, trying to control her shaking. She realized something terrifying. She wasn't just in danger of theft. She was in danger of her life. This man was methodical, cold, and willing to use force. She needed a plan. She needed to survive. Brenda slowly edged toward the front door. Her mind raced. If she could escape, maybe she could alert neighbors or get to the street. But the intruder's shadow loomed in the hallway. She couldn't risk being seen. Confrontation. Suddenly, the man turned. His eyes locked on hers. Brenda raised the flashlight. "Stay back," she shouted. He lunged. The crowbar swung. Brenda ducked just in time, the wood scraping the armchair where she had been sitting moments before. Her heart was hammering. She grabbed the nearest object, a heavy vase, and hurled it at him, connected, shattering against the wall behind him. For a split second, he faltered. That was all she needed. The escaped Brenda sprinted toward the back door, knowing the intruder would pursue. She fumbled with the lock, hands slippery with sweat. She could hear him yelling, the gun clattering against the floor as he lunged. Finally, the door gave way. She stumbled outside, landing hard on the cold concrete. She scrambled to her feet and ran to the neighbor's house, pounding on the door until it opened. Brenda described the intruder height, build, clothing, voice, even the crowbar. Police arrived within minutes, combing the neighborhood, but the man had already fled into the night. Investigation and aftermath over the next several weeks. Brenda worked with detectives to provide every detail. Discovered that the intruder was part of a small criminal group targeting single women in the area. Multiple homes had been broken into in the previous month, but none of the victims had been confronted directly until Brenda. Her ability to remain calm, use objects around her for defense, and take decisive action had saved her life. Investigators later told her that, without her quick thinking, the intruder would have been able to use the gun, and her injuries or death could have been certain. Brenda also realized the importance of psychological awareness. She had recognized danger quickly, stayed alert, and acted strategically, not just physically, but mentally, to survive. Psychological recovery. In the weeks following the invasion, Brenda faced severe emotional trauma. She couldn't sleep, flinched at every sound, and constantly replayed the attack in her mind. But she refused to be a victim. She began taking self-defense classes, reinforced her home security, and became an advocate for safety in her community. She shared her story with local women's groups, teaching them about situational awareness, preparation, and mental resilience. She said later, "It wasn't luck. I survived because I stayed alert, stayed calm, and didn't give up. Your mind is the first line of defense. Your body can only act if your mind stays sharp. Justice served, police eventually apprehended the intruder after a neighboring store owner recognized him from Brenda's description. He was convicted on multiple counts of burglary and assault. Brenda's detailed observations, bravery, and calm actions had been critical in ensuring his capture. Her story became a case study in home invasion survival, demonstrating that even when faced with an armed intruder, preparation, awareness, and courage can save lives. Legacy of survival. Brenda's story is not just about a home invasion, it's about human resilience and the power of quick thinking under extreme pressure. She survived an armed intruder in her home, alone, with nothing but her wits, instinct, and courage. She transformed fear into action, terror into strategy, and danger into survival. Her experience serves as a warning and an inspiration, even in your own home. Prepared vigilance and mental resilience can be the difference between life and death. Brenda didn't just survive that night. She became a symbol of determination, awareness, and the human capacity to act decisively when confronted with unimaginable danger. She walked into her living room as an ordinary woman. She walked out a survivor. The girl who walked away, the true story of Elizabeth Smart, kidnapped and found alive. It was a quiet summer night in Salt Lake City, Utah. Elizabeth Smart, just 14 years old, was at home with her family, preparing for bed. The house was calm, safe, familiar. Parents tucking her into her own room, her younger brother asleep in the next room. For Elizabeth, life was ordinary. Homework, friends, music, and family dinners. But at 2 a.m., ordinary life shattered. A man, Brian David Mitchell, entered her home, accompanied by his wife, Wanda Barzee. They were patient, calculated, and completely unafraid of crossing the line into the unimaginable. Mitchell had been watching the family for weeks, studying routines, patterns, weaknesses. He struck now, when the house was quiet, when Elizabeth was alone in her room. The abduction. Elizabeth was taken from her bed, dressed in pajamas, and forced into the darkness outside. She screamed, tried to resist, but Mitchell was strong and cold. Barzee blocked the hallway, her presence unnerving but almost robotic. Elizabeth's parents woke to chaos. She was gone. Within minutes, she had vanished into the night, the city's lights and familiar streets now a trap she would have to survive. For Elizabeth, fear was immediate, suffocating and paralyzing. But even in the darkest moment, her instincts flickered. Observe, remember, survive. She noticed details: Mitchell's smell, tobacco and sweat, the rhythm of his steps, the sound of the car tires on gravel.
Out the wind direction.
Every sensory input was recorded in her mind. Every detail might become a clue. Every moment might be an opportunity. Days in captivity. Elizabeth's captivity lasted 9 months, a period marked by manipulation, abuse, and psychological control. Mitchell and Barzee subjected her to constant brainwashing, telling her the outside world was dangerous, that her family would never understand, that she belonged with them now. But Elizabeth resisted in small ways: mental escapes, hidden observations, noting landmarks during forced movements, memorizing routes, watching for police patterns in the city, even noting when neighbors appeared outside. Her survival depended on subtle compliance, the kind that kept her physically safe while maintaining psychological resistance. She could not scream, she could not run, not yet, but she could watch, learn, wait. The journey during her captivity, Elizabeth was moved frequently from house to house, often at night. She slept in basements, closets, sometimes hidden under blankets and cars. The isolation was complete. Yet she never stopped noticing the environment: locks, doors, possible exits, sounds, times of day. She memorized these with precision. Every footstep outside the house, every conversation between her captors, every routine was etched in her memory. At one point, she was forced to hike through mountainous terrain, disguised and hidden. She noted trees, rocks, and paths that could serve as escape routes. Even in fear, Elizabeth's mind was alert, mapping a way back to freedom. Mental resilience. Psychologists later described Elizabeth's behavior during captivity as extraordinary. She endured abuse and manipulation without surrendering her core sense of identity. She retained memory of her family, her home, and her true life, mental anchors that kept her grounded. She developed small coping mechanisms, singing quietly to herself, reciting poems from memory, counting objects in a room, observing patterns in her captor's behavior. Even when forced to perform rituals dictated by Mitchell, she complied superficially while maintaining internal control. She survived because she learned the limits of her captor's attention, exploiting moments of distraction, weakness, or negligence. The escape Elizabeth's chance came one day in March 2003, 9 months after her abduction. Mitchell and Barzy had left her alone momentarily in a residential area. A neighbor noticed a girl matching her description, dressed oddly with a man and woman nearby. Elizabeth seized the moment. She ran toward the neighbor, shouting for help. Her voice carried terror, desperation, and authority. The neighbor immediately called police. It was over in minutes. She was safe, alive, free. Aftermath Elizabeth's return to her family was emotional and surreal. She had survived 9 months of captivity, manipulation, and abuse. She had endured threats, isolation, and psychological torment, yet she emerged alive. Her bravery and composure provided police with key details that led to the eventual arrest and conviction of Mitchell and Barzy. Elizabeth's observations, her attention to detail, her memorization of routes, her awareness of her captor's routines were critical in ensuring justice. Legacy of survival. Elizabeth Smart's story is not only one of survival, but of extraordinary courage, mental resilience, and strength under prolonged duress. She transformed her trauma into advocacy, speaking publicly about abduction, psychological control, and victim resilience. Her story has inspired legislation, awareness programs, and countless survivors worldwide. She said later, "The human mind is stronger than we imagine. Even when everything is taken from you, your memory, your hope, your sense of self can carry you through." Elizabeth didn't just survive her kidnapping. She took control of her narrative, ensured her captors faced justice, and became a beacon of hope for victims everywhere. Her story proves a universal truth, even in the darkest captivity. Intelligence, patience, and courage can turn the impossible into reality. Elizabeth Smart walked into a nightmare. She walked out a survivor. He took her from the parking lot. The true story of Michelle Knight surviving long-term captivity? It was a sunny Saturday afternoon in Cleveland, Ohio, in 2002. Michelle Knight, 32, had just parked her car outside a grocery store. The lot was busy with families, shoppers, and workers. Michelle intended to run inside, grab a few items, and return to her apartment. She felt the casual security of routine, familiar streets, familiar faces, a predictable environment. A man lingered nearby, calm, observing, patient. His name was Ariel Castro, and he had been scouting the area for potential victims. Michelle's ordinary life made her a target. In seconds, her life changed. Abduction. As Michelle returned to her car, Castro emerged from a van. Before she could react, he grabbed her, pulled her into the vehicle, and pressed a cloth over her mouth. Panic surged. She struggled, but his grip was unyielding. Within minutes, Michelle was driven to an isolated house. Her cries for help were muffled, her protests ignored. She realized immediately she had been abducted. She scanned the vehicle, doors, locks, the driver's patterns, and the streets they passed. Every detail could matter, every observation a potential lifeline. The captor's house, Michelle was taken to a small, nondescript home in a quiet Cleveland neighborhood. From the outside, it appeared ordinary, a 2-story house with a porch, tidy garden, and a mailbox. Inside, it was a prison, locked doors, barred windows, and a series of rooms designed to isolate and control. Castro controlled every aspect of Michelle's life. She was forced to stay in one room for weeks at a time, provided only minimal food and water. Her movements were monitored. Any resistance was met with violence or threats. Michelle quickly understood that survival required obedience, observation, and careful mental calculation. Brute force would get her nowhere. Only patience and vigilance could preserve her life. Years in captivity, Michelle, along with 2 other women abducted later, endured years of imprisonment, abuse, and manipulation. Castro's psychological control was extreme. Threats, isolation, and forced compliance were daily realities. Michelle learned to read his moods, to predict his movements, and to avoid provoking him unnecessarily. She memorized the house layout, the locations of tools, keys, and exits, and the patterns of Castro's errands. Her survival was mental as much as physical. Every decision, when to speak, when to move, when to sleep, was calculated. She turned the confines of captivity into a classroom, teaching herself observation, patience, and strategic thinking. Psychological tactics, Castro's manipulation was intense. He convinced Michelle and the other women that the outside world would never accept them, that they were powerless, and that no one could rescue them. But Michelle refused to surrender entirely. She maintained mental autonomy, rehearsed escape plans, and documented everything in her mind: the layout of the rooms, timing of the doors and locks, and the routines of her captor. Over time, Michelle realized that survival required more than endurance. It required opportunity. She needed Castro to make a mistake, and he would. The opportunity. After over a decade of captivity, Michelle and the other women saw their chance. Castro had left the door unlocked briefly while taking a vehicle outside for errands. Michelle acted decisively. She led the other women quietly out of the house, through a side door, and onto the street. They encountered a neighbor who immediately called police. Within minutes, officers arrived and arrested Castro. The rescue revealed horrifying details. 3 women had been imprisoned in the same house for years, subjected to repeated abuse, and left to survive under unimaginable conditions. Freedom and recovery. Michelle and her fellow survivors faced long paths to recovery. Years of psychological trauma, physical injuries, and emotional scars required therapy, support, and resilience. Yet Michelle's survival was a testament to vigilance, intelligence, and courage. Ability to memorize details, anticipate her captor's movements, and act decisively saved her life and the lives of the other women. She later described her ordeal as one that demanded constant mental engagement. You have to be aware. You have to think 10 steps ahead. Survival isn't just staying alive. It's observing, planning, and waiting for the right moment. Legacy of survival, Michelle. Knight's story exemplifies endurance in the face of extreme danger. She survived over a decade of captivity, mental manipulation, and physical abuse. She emerged alive, determined, and ready to reclaim her life. Her survival proved that even in situations of absolute control, mental acuity, patience, and courage can create a path to freedom. Michelle walked into captivity. She walked out alive. She walked out a survivor, the girl who escaped the van. The true story of Elizabeth Andes surviving abduction by a stranger. It began like any other Saturday morning in Dayton, Ohio, in 1978. Elizabeth Andes, 17, had just finished her shift at a local grocery store. She was walking toward the bus stop, humming a tune she had learned at school, unaware that someone was watching. The street was quiet, lined with small homes and neatly trimmed lawns. Children played in backyards. Neighbors sipped coffee on porches. Elizabeth's life was ordinary, peaceful, safe. But safety is fragile, and predators know that. A man lurked in the shadows, leaning against a faded white van parked a few houses down, calm, patient, calculating. His name was Charles B. Leach, and he had been watching the area for weeks, looking for a girl alone. Elizabeth's ordinary path was about to turn into a nightmare. The abduction, as Elizabeth approached the bus stop, Leach stepped forward. "Hey, need a ride?" he called, friendly and disarming. Elizabeth hesitated. "No, thank you," she said, clutching her bag tighter. Before she could react further, he lunged, grabbing her arm and forcing her into the van. She screamed, kicked, and fought, but he was strong, prepared, and relentless. The doors slammed shut. Darkness, isolation, fear. Elizabeth immediately assessed the situation. The van had tinted windows. She could not see outside. She counted the engine's hum, listening for changes in speed or direction. Every detail could matter. Every second might be her last chance to survive. Inside the captor's vehicle, the ride seemed to last forever. Elizabeth tried to stay calm, analyzing everything she could. The layout of the van, possible escape points, and the man's attention span. Leach attempted to intimidate her with threats, telling her that no one would ever find her, but Elizabeth refused to give him psychological control. She forced herself to breathe slowly, stay observant, and keep her mind sharp. Her survival depended on patience and strategy. She could not fight physically, he was stronger. She had to outthink him. The captor's house leech drove her to a small, remote house in the outskirts of Dayton. It was a seemingly ordinary home, but inside it was a prison. Locks on doors, curtains drawn, and the constant presence of her captor made it impossible to escape immediately. Elizabeth was forced into a room the size of a small bedroom. She was given minimal food, no phone, and restricted movement. The psychological pressure was immense. She was isolated, alone, and under constant surveillance. But Elizabeth refused to surrender. She observed everything: the doors, the windows, the locks, and the behavior of her captor. Every pattern, every mistake, became a potential path to freedom. Learning the captor days turned into weeks. Elizabeth realized that survival required understanding Leech's routines. Asterisk, when did he leave the house? Asterisk, how long was he gone? Asterisk, which doors did he leave unlocked? Asterisk, when was he most distracted? She memorized everything. Her mind became a map of the house and its vulnerabilities. She also studied his psychological habits, noting signs of fatigue, distraction, and overconfidence. Elizabeth learned the critical skill of controlled compliance. Obey enough to avoid punishment, but remain mentally active and aware. Every day she rehearsed escape scenarios, visualizing routes, distances, and landmarks. The escape plan, after several weeks, Elizabeth noticed a crucial opportunity. Leech had left a window unlocked while tending to the yard. She waited for the precise moment. His attention diverted and quietly opened the window. Once outside, she ran across the yard, her heart hammering, her legs aching. Every step was measured. Stay quiet, avoid open areas, reach the street. She made it to the main road and flagged down a passing car. Her voice trembled, but carried urgency. Help, call the police. He's trying to hurt me. The driver called immediately, and Elizabeth was rescued within minutes. Aftermath: Elizabeth's detailed observations of her captor's routines. The house layout and the van's route were invaluable to law enforcement. Leech was arrested shortly thereafter and eventually convicted of multiple charges related to the abduction. Elizabeth faced psychological recovery, therapy, counseling, and rebuilding trust in the world around her. Yet she also became a symbol of courage, intelligence, and determination under extreme duress. She later said, "I survived because I never stopped thinking. Even in fear, I watched, memorized, and waited. I knew my only chance was patience and planning." Legacy of survival: Elizabeth Andy's story illustrates the power of mental resilience in captivity. She endured psychological pressure, isolation, and threats, yet she emerged alive, aware, and prepared. Her ability to observe, anticipate, and act decisively transformed a potentially fatal situation into survival. She proved that even in the most dangerous circumstances, intelligence and courage can prevail. Elizabeth walked into a nightmare. She walked out alive. She walked out a survivor. He took her from the streetlight, the true story of Jaycee Lee Dugard, surviving 18 years of captivity. It was a quiet summer evening in South Lake Tahoe, California. In June 1991, Jaycee Lee Dugard, 11 years old, was walking home from school with her mother. The streets were calm, the sun setting behind the mountains, painting the town in shades of gold and pink. Children played in yards, neighbors chatted on porches, and traffic hummed quietly. Jaycee's life was ordinary: friends, schoolwork, games with her sister, safe, routine, predictable. But safety can vanish in a heartbeat. A man was watching from the shadows, leaning against a rusted gray car parked near the street. Calm, patient, calculating. His name was Philip Garrido, and he had spent months studying Jaycee's routine. He knew when she would walk alone, when her mother would be distracted, and how to strike without witnesses. And now, the opportunity had arrived. The abduction: as Jaycee approached a streetlight near her home, Garrido lunged. Strong arms grabbed her, a cloth pressed over her mouth. Her screams were muffled. Panic surged. She struggled, kicking and twisting, but he was strong, prepared, and merciless. In a matter of moments, Jaycee was forced into the car and driven to a secluded location. Far from homes, neighbors, and help, darkness and fear engulfed her. Even in terror, Jaycee's mind flickered with survival instincts. She observed the interior of the car, the pattern of the streets, the turns and stops, any landmarks. Each detail could be vital, a mental map for potential escape. Life in captivity. Jaycee was taken to Garrido's house, a secluded compound hidden behind trees and fences. Inside, she was locked away in small, windowless rooms. Life became one of absolute control and constant fear. Garrido and his wife subjected her to psychological manipulation, threats, and abuse. The world outside ceased to exist. Time blurred. Days, weeks, months, years, she had no measure of either. But Jaycee learned to survive by observing. Every routine, every errand, every weakness of her captors was cataloged in her mind. Which doors were left unlocked at times? When did Garrido leave the property, and for how long? Its signs indicated distraction or fatigue. She memorized layouts, observed guards' patterns, and rehearsed escape routes mentally. Years of observation, for 18 years, Jaycee endured captivity. She witnessed her captors' obsessive behaviors, mood swings, and dangerous tendencies. She endured threats, manipulation, and forced compliance, yet she survived by maintaining a mental fortress. She kept hope alive, recalled her family, and used observation and patience to stay alive. Even when she was forced to participate in Garrido's twisted rituals, she maintained psychological autonomy. Compliance was temporary, survival was permanent. The breakthrough opportunity in 2009, Garrido made critical mistakes. He and his wife allowed Jaycee more freedom around the property, trusting her to remain compliant. Their carelessness would be her chance. Jaycee noticed visitors entering the compound. She observed the routines of neighbors, police, and delivery drivers. She memorized exact times when Garrido and his wife were distracted. One morning, she seized the opportunity. Using her mental map of the property, she left her confined space, approached a visitor, and revealed her identity. Freedom, the visitor called authorities immediately. Police arrived and Jaycee was finally freed after 18 years of unimaginable captivity. She was reunited with her family, overwhelmed by relief, disbelief, and trauma. Investigators confirmed her meticulous observation and patience had been critical to her survival. Her knowledge of her captors' routines, habits, and vulnerabilities allowed her to act decisively when the moment arose. Recovery and resilience. Jaycee's life after captivity involved extensive psychological recovery, therapy, reintegration, and learning to navigate a world she had been barred from for nearly 2 decades. Yet her survival story is one of extraordinary courage, intelligence, and endurance. Endured years of abuse without surrendering her mind or hope. She later reflected, "You survive because you never stop thinking. You pay attention, you wait for the right moment, and you act. Your mind is your greatest weapon." Legacy of survival. Jaycee Lee Dugard's story is one of extraordinary resilience. She endured 18 years of captivity, manipulation, and abuse, yet emerged alive. Mentally strong and determined to reclaim her life. Her survival demonstrates a universal truth. Patience, observation, and courage can overcome even the most extreme danger. Jaycee walked into a nightmare. She walked out alive. She walked out a survivor. The Dyatlov Pass incident, the mysterious deaths of 9 hikers in the Ural Mountains, 1959, it was January 27, 1959, when 9 experienced hikers set out on a trek through the remote northern Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union. Led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student. The group was composed of 8 men and 2 women, all skilled, well-prepared, and seasoned in winter hiking. Their goal was straightforward: reach Somerton Mountain and return safely, a journey that should have taken a few weeks. What happened next would become one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. The expedition begins. The team set off from the small town of Aveldel, full of optimism and careful preparation. They were equipped with tents, supplies, and warm clothing, suited for the harsh Siberian winter. Maps were studied, routes plotted. Communication was limited, but each hiker was disciplined and aware of survival tactics. By January 25th, they reached the edge of the Kholat-Syakhl mountain, name ominously translating to Dead Mountain in the local Mansi language. The region was desolate, silent, and brutally cold. Temperatures plummeted well below -30 degrees Celsius, -22 degrees Fahrenheit, and the wind could slice through even the warmest clothing. Despite the conditions, the group appeared confident. But unknown forces, whether human, natural, or inexplicable, were waiting. The last camp. The group made camp on the slopes of Kholat Syakhl, planning to summit the mountain the following day. Eyewitnesses and later investigations revealed they had set up a tent in a location. That was unusual for seasoned hikers, an area exposed to strong winds and heavy snow accumulation. Their last diary entries and photographs captured the serene beauty of the Ural wilderness, snow-blanketed slopes, icy rivers, and the faint glow of the polar night. But these records also hint at something amiss, signs of tension, weather concerns, and perhaps an unspoken anxiety among the hikers. The discovery. When the hikers failed to return, a search party was dispatched. Days later, their abandoned campsite was discovered. The tent was shredded from the inside, cut open in a panic. Footprints in the snow led away from the tent, some barefoot, some partially dressed, disappearing into the dark forest. Over the next weeks, the bodies were found in increasingly bizarre and disturbing circumstances. First, 2 bodies, lightly clothed, found near the forest as if they had fled in a hurry. They were not wearing shoes. Next, 3 bodies, discovered between 300 to 500 meters from the tent, with signs of hypothermia. Final 4 bodies, found much later, buried under snow in a ravine, some with severe trauma, fractured skulls, chest injuries, and missing eyes and a tongue in some cases.
Duh!
The condition of the bodies sparked confusion and fear. There were no signs of a struggle with another human, yet the injuries were extreme. How could experienced hikers succumb so quickly and in such terrifying ways in the wilderness they knew so well? Theories begin. Soviet investigators were baffled. Official reports suggested a compelling natural force caused the deaths, but the description was vague, raising more questions than answers. Over decades, numerous theories have emerged. Avalanche theory, some believe a sudden snowslide forced the hikers to flee their tent in panic, resulting in hypothermia and trauma. Critics argue the slope was too gentle for a deadly avalanche, and the injuries of the last 4 bodies are inconsistent with snow pressure. Kidnapping winds, powerful, localized windstorms, may have disoriented the hikers, forcing them into the open snow. This theory cannot fully explain the blunt force injuries found later. Infrasound phenomenon, some scientists suggest specific wind patterns could create low-frequency sound waves causing panic and terror. While plausible for the initial tent escape, it doesn't account for broken bones and internal trauma. Military testing, secret weapons, speculation about secret Soviet tests of parachute mines, rockets, or other military experiments emerged. Traces of radiation were found on some clothing, lending limited credibility, but no conclusive evidence exists. Paranormal or extraterrestrial theories, some suggest UFOs, Yeti attacks, or other supernatural forces. While sensational, these theories remain speculative and unsupported by forensic evidence. The bizarre details, several strange details add to the mystery. Some hikers' clothing had strange radioactive contamination. Some bodies were missing key facial features. Footprints showed disorganized movement, suggesting panic, but no footprints of other humans were nearby. The tent itself was slashed from the inside, implying urgency, yet there was no sign of external intrusion. The combination of hypothermia, trauma, and inexplicable injuries created a perfect storm of confusion for investigators. Modern investigations in recent years, Russian authorities reopened the case multiple times. Using modern techniques like forensic reconstruction and avalanche simulations, a 2021 report suggested that a small slab avalanche, compounded by strong winds and panic, could plausibly explain the initial flight from the tent and the deaths by hypothermia. However, the severe internal injuries and missing body parts of the last victims remain unexplained. Keeping the story alive in the realm of mystery, legacy of the Dyatlov Pass incident. The Dyatlov Pass incident is remembered not just for the tragic deaths, but for the enduring mystery surrounding them. The hikers were skilled, prepared, and disciplined, yet faced an unknown and lethal force. The story captures the imagination because it defies simple explanation. Natural forces, human error, or something beyond comprehension may have combined to produce a nightmare scenario. Books, documentaries, and countless articles attempt to solve it, but the Ural Mountains keep their secrets. The footprints, the shredded tent, and the bodies frozen in snow continue to haunt investigators and adventurers alike. The Dyatlov Pass incident is more than a death. It is a chilling reminder of how unpredictable, merciless, and mysterious the natural world can be. Conclusion 9. Young hikers walked into the Ural wilderness seeking adventure and challenge. They left behind shoes, diaries, and a shredded tent. They left questions that remain unanswered for over 60 years. Somewhere in the snow and wind of Kolatsieko, the truth lies buried with them, waiting for answers we may never find. They walked into a mountain pass. They walked into a mystery. They never walked out. The Somerton Man, the unsolved mystery of the unknown man found dead on an Australian beach. 1948, it was a warm December morning in 1948 when a man's body was discovered on Somerton Beach, just outside Adelaide, South Australia. The man was well dressed, wearing a suit and tie, but his shoes were scuffed, his posture strangely rigid. He appeared calm, almost dignified, as if sleeping on the sand, yet he was unmistakably dead. He carried no identification. No wallet, no keys, no clue as to who he was or how he had ended up there. Only a small, cryptic scrap of paper in a hidden pocket bore the words, "Tamam Shud." Persian 4, ended or finished. Thus began one of the most mysterious deaths of the 20th century. The discovery of the body was found by a man walking along the beach. He looked normal at first glance, middle-aged, neatly groomed, physically fit. But the closer examination revealed disturbing inconsistencies. His shoes were worn, yet clean. His clothes were in good condition, but appeared hastily put together. Police were baffled. How could a man of apparent means, well-dressed and healthy, end up dead on a public beach without leaving a trace of who he was? Even stranger, his posture was unnatural. Arms resting slightly outward, head tilted toward the sand, as though he had lain down intentionally and remained still. The investigation begins. Autopsy revealed no obvious signs of trauma. The man had not been shot, stabbed, or beaten. There were no external injuries, but internally, toxicologists detected traces of an unknown substance in his system. It was not a standard poison known at the time. Some suggested it was a rare experimental chemical. Others speculated he had ingested a subtle combination of drugs. Investigators scoured local records. No missing person reports matched his description. The police even appealed to the public, asking for tips, but no leads emerged. The case grew more mysterious with the discovery of a hidden pocket in his pants, containing a tiny scrap of paper. Tamam Shud ended, seemed to suggest suicide, yet the meticulousness of his appearance contradicted a hasty, desperate act. The code and the book. Weeks later, investigators discovered a copy of a book of Persian poetry, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, in the back seat of an abandoned car near the beach. A cryptic note in the back of the book appeared to be a code of letters, possibly intended to communicate messages. Handwriting experts could not conclusively link it to any known individual. The connection between the man, the book, the code, and the words Tamam Shud deepened the mystery. Was this a spy? A secret agent? A man involved in espionage or crime? Or was it something else entirely? Theories emerge. Over decades, numerous theories emerged. 1. Espionage. Spy theory, the timing post-World War II, and the cryptic code led many to believe he was involved in espionage. Perhaps an intelligence agent who had been poisoned. 2. Suicide. The words Tamam Shud could indicate a planned suicide, yet there was no sign of emotional distress, nor a suicide note beyond the cryptic paper. 3. Poisoning assassination. Some forensic experts suggested undetectable chemical or radioactive substances, an early Cold War method of assassination, romantic personal mystery. Some theorists suggested the coded message could be connected to a secret lover or personal vendetta. None of these theories could fully explain the man's identity or cause of death. The unsolved identity, despite decades of investigation, the Somerton Man's identity remains unknown. Facial reconstructions, DNA testing, and genealogical analysis have suggested potential matches, but none have been conclusively verified. Every detail seems to add another layer to the enigma. His fingerprints and dental records match no known records. The clothes were tailored with labels removed. The mysterious code remains unsolved, hinting at intelligence work or personal secrets. Even in death, the Somerton Man kept his secrets. Modern investigations' recent efforts using DNA analysis from preserved hair samples have suggested a potential family connection in the Middle East. But confirmation is elusive. Some researchers have examined the case through the lens of Cold War espionage, rare poisons, or psychological profiling. Yet every answer seems to reveal more questions. The beach, the body, the book, and the code remain etched in public consciousness as symbols of one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. Legacy of mystery, the Somerton Man represents the ultimate enigma, a man who appeared ordinary, yet whose death defies explanation. He left behind no name, no story, no explanation, only fragments, a cryptic paper, a code, and a book. Every new theory raises more questions. How did he die? Who was he? Was he a spy, a victim, or something entirely different? For over 70 years, the Somerton Man has inspired books, documentaries, and speculation, and yet the mystery endures. Conclusion: the man on Somerton Beach walked into life like any other citizen. We walked into the sun, the sand, and the waves. But he left no footprint of his existence beyond a cryptic note and a puzzling death. Some mysteries are never solved. Some deaths remain beyond explanation. The Somerton Man walked into the world unknown. He walked into the sands of mystery. He never walked out. The Hinterkaifeck Murders. The chilling mystery of a family slaughtered on a remote German farm. 1922, March 31st, 1922, was an ordinary spring day on the Hinterkaifeck farm, a small isolated homestead nestled in the Bavarian countryside of Germany. The farm was home to Andreas Gruber, his wife Cizelia, their widowed daughter Victoria Gabriel, and her 2 children, Cizelia and Joseph. Life was hard but predictable. Family relied on farming, caring for animals, and the simple rhythms of rural existence. Yet beneath the peaceful facade, something sinister lurked. Strange occurrences before the murders. In the weeks leading up to March 31st, locals reported bizarre events at Hinterkaifeck. Footsteps were heard in the attic, though no one was supposed to be there. Tools were moved, doors unlocked, and animals fed mysteriously. Andreas Gruber reportedly told neighbors he felt someone was watching the family from the woods. These details were chilling. Something or someone had infiltrated the isolated farm undetected. The discovery on April 4th, after the family failed to appear at church or check in with neighbors, the authorities were called. When police arrived at Hinterkaifeck, they found a scene of unimaginable horror. 6 family members were brutally murdered, bludgeoned with a pickaxe in the barn and farmhouse. The bodies were discovered in various locations, including the barn and living spaces. There were no signs of forced entry, yet someone had clearly entered the farm and lingered undetected. Even more disturbing, the killer appeared to have stayed at the farm for several days after the murders. Food had been eaten, fires kept burning, and animals tended. The investigation. Police conducted one of the most thorough investigations in Germany at the time, yet despite meticulous evidence collection, the identity of the murderer was never confirmed. Several theories emerged. 1. A family feud or revenge. Some believed a disgruntled former employee or neighbor harbored a vendetta. 2. A stranger or serial killer. The methodical nature of the killings suggested someone with experience in murder. 3. Internal family secrets. Some theorists speculated there were hidden conflicts within the household, though nothing concrete was proven. 4. Supernatural theories. Due to the bizarre pre-murder phenomena, footsteps, moved objects, and the feeling of being watched, some locals whispered about curses or hauntings. Despite multiple suspects being questioned over the years, no one was ever charged. The case remains officially unsolved, as the horrifying details the murders were especially brutal. Andreas Gruber, the patriarch, was killed first, suggesting premeditation. Cizelia Gruber and the children were murdered in a manner indicating extreme rage or cold calculation. Victoria Gabriel reportedly fought the attacker, yet she too succumbed. The killer's precision and ability to remain undetected for days created an enduring aura of fear and mystery. Aftermath: the Hinterkaifeck Murders shocked Germany and the world. The remote location, combined with the grotesque violence and lingering mystery, captured public imagination. Books, articles, and documentaries have analyzed every detail. The movement of the killer in the days before the murders, the possibility of someone living secretly on the property, the psychological profile of a potential murderer. Despite decades of analysis, Hinterkaifeck continues to fascinate criminologists, historians, and mystery enthusiasts alike. Legacy of the mystery Hinterkaifeck is remembered not just for the murder itself, but for its atmosphere of dread and unanswered questions. How did the killer enter and leave the property undetected? Why did the murderer stay after the killings? Who could commit such violence, and what was the motive? The farm was eventually abandoned, leaving the site as a haunting reminder of unresolved evil. Conclusion. The Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of history's most chilling unsolved cases. A family of 6 walked into their home on a seemingly ordinary day, only to encounter a force capable of committing unimaginable violence and vanishing without a trace. The farm, the footsteps, the tools moved mysteriously before the killings. All speak to an enduring enigma that continues to captivate true crime enthusiasts and historians. The Gruber family walked into their home. They walked into horror. And they never walked out. The Villisca Axe Murders, the chilling mystery of a family slaughtered in Iowa. 1912. It was the night of June 9th, 1912. In the small town of Villisca, Iowa, the streets were quiet, lamps flickering in windows, and the town's residents had retired early on a hot summer evening. In the Moore family home, life carried on like any other night. Josiah Moore, his wife Sarah, and their 4 children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul, were settling in for bed. Little did they know. A nightmare was approaching that would terrorize their town and baffle investigators for over a century. The discovery the next morning, neighbors noticed something unusual. The Moore home was silent. Letters were delivered to empty windows, and no smoke rose from the stove. Concerned, neighbors entered the home, only to be confronted with a scene of unimaginable horror. All 8 members of the household, including Josiah and Sarah Moore, were murdered in their beds. The bodies of 4 children, aged 6 to 12, were found brutally bludgeoned. The family's housekeeper, Lena Stillinger, and 2 visiting children were also killed. The murder weapon, an axe found in the home, covered in blood. The scene was grisly and chaotic, yet there were no signs of robbery. Money, valuables, and personal belongings were untouched. The investigation, the case, drew investigators from local authorities and federal agencies. But despite extensive inquiries, the murderer was never conclusively identified. Several suspicious elements puzzled detectives. The window and doors were locked from the inside. How did the killer enter and leave? A suspicious visitor was reported in the area earlier that evening, but no one could confirm his identity. Some investigators noted that the murders were methodical, yet committed with brutal force, suggesting a combination of planning and frenzy. Theories and suspects over the years, numerous theories and suspects emerged, but none fit perfectly. 1. A vengeful neighbor or townsperson. Some suggested a family feud or resentment against the Moores. 1. A traveling serial killer, the early 20th century saw itinerant murderers. Some speculated the Villisca Axe killer was a wandering criminal. 1. A personal vendetta. Investigators considered jealousy or revenge against a specific family member, but evidence was inconclusive. 1. Occult or ritualistic motives. Some theorists have speculated the methodical nature and timing of the murders indicated ritualistic intent. Despite hundreds of interviews, searches, and suspect interrogations, no one was ever convicted. Bizarre details. The Villisca Axe murders remain chilling due to strange, unexplained details. The bodies were arranged neatly, as if the killer paused between attacks. Some victims had head injuries inflicted with the same weapon, but force and angle varied, suggesting rage mixed with methodical execution. Windows were closed, doors locked, and curtains drawn, leaving investigators to wonder how the killer escaped without leaving a trace. The combination of brutality, precision, and mystery created a case that haunted Villisca for generations. Legacy and public fascination over a century later. The Villisca Axe Murders continue to captivate true crime enthusiasts, historians, and paranormal investigators. The house itself has become a site of curiosity, with visitors claiming to experience cold spots and unexplained noises, shadows moving in empty rooms, a lingering sense of dread, as if the tragedy of that night had left a permanent imprint. Numerous books, documentaries, and podcasts have explored the murders, but the case remains officially unsolved. Conclusion: the Villisca Axe Murders serve as a chilling reminder of how sudden, brutal violence can strike ordinary families. The Moores and their guests walked into their home expecting a normal summer night, only to encounter a calculated, brutal force they could neither anticipate nor survive. The town searched for answers. Investigators tried to uncover motives. The world speculated endlessly. Yet the Villisca Axe Murders remain a haunting enigma, a case where the perpetrator vanished into history, leaving only questions. The Moores walked into their home. They walked into horror, and they never walked out. The Isdal Woman, the mysterious death of an unidentified woman in Norway. 1970, on November 29, 1970, hikers in the remote Isdal Valley, near Bergen, Norway, stumbled across the body of a woman. She was unrecognizable, burned severely, her identity erased. Her death would become one of the most baffling and mysterious unsolved cases in modern European history. No identification, no explanation, no traceable origin, only questions. The discovery of the body was found in a secluded ravine known for its rugged terrain and sparse population. Authorities quickly noted several perplexing details. The woman was partially burned but not killed by fire. Her cause of death was later determined to be poisoning. She carried no identification. All labels in her clothing had been removed, suggesting deliberate efforts to conceal her identity. Personal items included strange, untraceable keys, a compass, and multiple suitcases containing wigs, clothing, and disguises. The meticulous nature of her concealment suggested planning and intent. Wherever she was, she had lived carefully, avoiding detection, and yet she met a violent end. The Norwegian authorities launched a nationwide investigation, but leads were scarce. Witnesses reported seeing her in hotels in Bergen using multiple aliases. Hotel records revealed strange behavior, including payments in cash, avoidance of local interactions, and hurried checkouts. Travel patterns indicated she moved across Norway and neighboring countries in ways that suggested espionage. Despite tireless work, the Isdal Woman remained unidentified. Her life before her death, her purpose, and her killers remained shrouded in secrecy. Theories emerge over the decades. Theorists have suggested multiple explanations. 1. Cold War spy theory. The timing height of the Cold War and her careful anonymity suggests she may have been a spy. Some believe she was engaged in intelligence operations for either NATO or the Warsaw Pact. 1. Suicide. Poisoning and planned concealment of identity could indicate intentional self-destruction. However, her behavior leading up to death, careful travel, multiple disguises, seems inconsistent with impulsive suicide. 1. Murder by unknown assailant. Others suggest she was tracked and killed by unknown agents, possibly due to sensitive knowledge. 1. Mystery in disguise. Her extensive use of wigs, aliases, and disguises implies a life entirely shrouded in secrecy, making it nearly impossible to identify her posthumously. The strange details the Isdal Woman case is chilling not just for her death, but for the bizarre elements surrounding it. Wigs, sunglasses, and altered appearances in multiple cities. Discarded suitcases found with carefully removed personal identifiers. Untraceable clothing labels, multiple aliases registered at hotels in different cities simultaneously. Every clue suggests a life lived in concealment, yet abruptly ended in violence. Modern investigations decades later, researchers used forensic genealogy, DNA analysis, and digital reconstruction to attempt to solve her identity. Facial reconstructions suggested a European appearance. DNA comparisons with potential relatives yielded inconclusive results. Some investigators found traces indicating potential espionage activity. Yet, despite modern technology, the Isdal Woman remains unidentified. Her death, motive, and life before Norway are still unknown. Legacy of mystery, the Isdal Woman remains one of the most enigmatic deaths in modern history. Her meticulous preparation contrasts starkly with the violent nature of her death. She left behind no personal history, no traceable identity, and no explanation. Every aspect of her life and death invites speculation, espionage, murder, suicide, or some combination thereof. Her story continues to captivate historians, journalists, and conspiracy theorists, embodying the perfect blend of mystery, danger, and the unknowable. Conclusion: The Isdal Woman walked into Norway under layers of disguise, anonymity, and secrecy. She lived a life carefully hidden from the world, yet met a violent, mysterious end in a remote valley. Her identity remains unknown. Her purpose remains unknown. She walked into the Isdal Valley. She walked into mystery. And she never walked out. As we reach the end of this journey through some of the most chilling, puzzling, and haunting real-life crimes and mysterious deaths in history, one truth becomes clear. The line between ordinary life and unimaginable tragedy is thinner than we think. From the desperate survival of those abducted against all odds to the unexplained forces that claimed the lives of entire families or left bodies without answers, these stories remind us of the fragility of life and the resilience of the human spirit. Some mysteries may never be solved. Some perpetrators may never face justice. And yet the courage, cunning, and endurance of the victims continue to inspire us. Teaching lessons about vigilance, hope, and survival. History is full of darkness, but through these stories we honor those who endured, those who disappeared, and those who left questions that echo through time. If these stories captivated you, make sure to like this video to show your support. Subscribe to the channel for more real-life mysteries and true crime stories, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We'd also love to hear your thoughts. Comment below on which story shocked or intrigued you the most. And share this video with friends who are fascinated by true crime and unsolved mysteries. Because for every unsolved crime, for every mysterious death, there is a story waiting to be told, then the truth, in some way, always demands to be remembered.